Hey there, story lovers. This is Fanfic Adventure, and we're bringing you an epic adventure. What if Naruto awakened the legendary Super Saiyan 4 during the Sasuke Retrieval Mission? Hit like, subscribe, and let's begin this journey. Chapter 1, The Breaking Point. The forest was losing its mind. Trees splintered at the roots like matchsticks. The ground heaved in waves, soil and stone churning upward in jagged ridges that made the terrain look like a mouth full of broken teeth. Somewhere behind Naruto, Lee had stopped moving, and that alone was enough to make his stomach feel like it had been replaced with cold iron. He didn't look back. He couldn't afford to. You're running out of ideas, Naruto. Shikamaru's voice was calm, dangerously, unnaturally calm, the way it always got when he was actually scared and using math to hold himself together. He was crouched behind the remains of a shattered oak, one hand pressed to his side where Taiyuya's chakra strings had found a gap 3 minutes ago. 3 of us still standing. Their formation hasn't broken. And Kimimaro, I know. Naruto cut him off, not because Shikamaru was wrong but because hearing it finished would make it real. Kimimaro stood 40 feet away and looked like he belonged somewhere outside the category of human. He was pale as winter moonlight, tall, unhurried, the kind of person who didn't bother with battle stances because he'd already decided how this ended. His curse mark had spread across half his face, dark lines crawling toward his jaw like cracks in old porcelain. He'd come out of nowhere, arriving the way disasters do, without announcement, without warning, simply present and already rearranging everything. Behind him, in the barrel that had been retrieved from the Sound 4's possession and now sat cracked open on the elevated stone outcropping like some grotesque trophy, Sasuke was motionless. Eyes closed. Curse mark active across his skin in an ugly purple crawl. Alive, probably. Naruto had confirmed it twice already by squinting through the smoke, but probably was doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence. The Sound 4 were elsewhere, each of them engaged with Konoha genin who were running on empty. Naruto had heard the fight sounds drop off to near silence from Niji's direction 20 seconds ago, and that silence was a specific kind of awful. He has a Kekii Genkai, Shikamaru said. Bone manipulation. He can reshape his own skeleton into weapons, extend them from any part of his body, harden them to the density of, I don't know, something that shouldn't exist. My shadow possession can't hold him. He flexed out of it in under 2 seconds. A pause. He's not afraid of anything I have. He's not afraid of anything period, Naruto said. He meant it as frustration. It came out as observation. Kimimaro tilted his head slightly, looking at Naruto the way a surgeon looks at a patient, clinical, detached, already thinking 3 steps past the current moment. You're the Jinchuriki. It wasn't a question. Orochimaru-sama mentioned you. He said you were loud. A pause so slight it barely qualified. He didn't mention you were this unimpressive. Naruto's jaw tightened. The retrieval mission ends here, Kimimaro continued, and there was no cruelty in his voice, which was somehow worse than if there had been. He wasn't taunting them. He was informing them, the way you inform someone of a natural law. Sasuke-kun belongs to Orochimaru-sama. You will not take him back. I don't particularly enjoy killing children, but I won't allow anything to interfere with his future. His future? Naruto repeated, and his voice had a crack in it he didn't intend. You don't get to decide his future. And you do. The question landed like a slap. Not because it was mean, because it was sincere, and that sincerity had a point to it. Naruto didn't answer. He launched forward instead, kunai in both hands, chakra spiking hard enough that the air around him shimmered. He went left, faked right, came in low, every genin trick, every piece of taijutsu he drilled over 3 years under Kakashi's grudging tutelage all compressed into 3 seconds of violent motion. Kimimaro moved one arm. That was all. A bone spike, 2 feet long, white as chalk, smooth as ceramic, extended from his forearm in a motion so casual it looked like he was brushing his sleeve back. Naruto twisted, took a glancing blow across his ribs instead of his chest, felt something crack and hit the ground in a roll that turned into a skid that turned into a hard stop against a tree trunk. The impact knocked the breath out of him in a grunt. The crack in his ribs was already healing. He could feel the burn of that, the Ninetales chakra sewing tissue back together in that way that felt like someone pressing hot metal against the inside of his skin. It was useful. He'd never once called it comfortable. He got up. Shikamaru watched him stand and something shifted in the strategist's expression. Not hope exactly, Shikamaru was too pragmatic for hope in a situation like this. Something more like a reluctant recalculation. Naruto charged again. He lost the next 30 seconds in an ugly, grinding, thoroughly one-sided exchange that left him with a crushed shoulder, a gash along his cheek that healed before it finished bleeding, and the distinct impression that Kimimaro was fighting at roughly 40% effort. The pale young man moved between Naruto's attacks with the minimum motion necessary, deflecting, redirecting, occasionally blocking with a bone shield that extended from his forearm like a buckler made of ivory. He wasn't even breathing hard. When Naruto hit the ground again, this time face first in a ditch that hadn't been there before, Kimimaro opened the earth with a ridge of bone spears. Shikamaru's voice came from somewhere above him. Stop charging him directly. Great advice, Naruto spat, spitting dirt. Got any that's actually useful? His curse mark is stage 2. His cellular regeneration and bone density are both enhanced. Attrition won't work on him, he'll outlast your healing factor. Shikamaru's tone didn't waver. Shadow clones. Multiple angles. Force him to commit to one, already tried that. How many? 12. Shikamaru went quiet for a moment. 12 simultaneous clones and Kimimaro had still walked through them. That rewrote several of his working assumptions. Naruto. A pause. I need you to be honest. How much chakra do you have left? Naruto climbed out of the ditch, shook mud off his jacket, and took stock. His chakra was fine. More than fine. He was dipping into the Ninetales reserve without quite meaning to, which he could feel as a faint heat behind his sternum, the way you feel a fireplace through a closed door. Not dangerous. Not yet. He'd been this far before. But something else was off, and it took him a moment to name it. The heat behind his sternum wasn't stationary. It was moving. Slow, rolling, like a tide coming in without the tide going back out. Every time he looked at Kimimaro standing up there beside Sasuke's barrel, every time he thought about Lee on the ground somewhere behind him, every time he heard the absence of sound from Miji's direction, the heat grew. Not sharply. Not explosively. It accumulated, like pressure behind a dam that was adding weight to the water, not cracking yet but measuring every inch of give in the stone. He'd never felt it move like that before. My chakra's fine, he said. He launched a wind of shadow clones, not 12 this time. 20. 30. He threw them out like a wave, and the forest exploded with identical orange jackets sprinting from every angle, from the trees above, from the ground, coming at Kimimaro from a geometry that had no clean solution. Kimimaro closed his eyes for 1 second. Then his entire skeleton restructured itself. Bones erupted from his back like a crown, from his shoulders, his arms, and he spun, a single terrifyingly graceful rotation that is his Kekkei Genkai had turned into something like a living blender, bone spikes extending 3 feet in every direction, cutting through shadow clones in a wave of orange smoke that blossomed and collapsed so fast the smoke hadn't cleared before he was already standing still again, untouched. 27 clones dispersed in under 4 seconds. Shikamaru made a sound that wasn't quite a word. Dance of the Clematis, Kimimaro said quietly. Not showboating. Just naming it, the way a craftsman names a technique because precision matters. He lowered his arms. You make more clones than anyone I've encountered. The chakra cost alone should have collapsed you twice. But the clones don't have intelligence, they attack on instinct, not strategy. You're creative, Uzumaki Naruto. But creativity without control is just noise. Naruto stood in the middle of the clone smoke, chest heaving, staring at him. The heat behind his sternum was not behind his sternum anymore. It was in his chest, his throat, the back of his eyes, his hands, it was everywhere, and it wasn't the sharp violent flare of the Ninetales' anger he'd felt during the fight with Haku, when red chakra had briefly flooded him and terrified everyone in the vicinity. This was different. This was organized, like something that had been packed down for a very long time was deciding, methodically and without drama, that the packing was done. Naruto. Shikamaru again, and for the first time his voice wasn't calm. Something's happening. Yeah. Naruto's voice sounded strange to his own ears. Lower. Like it was coming from somewhere behind his usual voice. I know. Your shadow, Naruto looked down. His shadow was wrong. It was his, same shape, same proportions, but it was too dark, ink black even in the filtered light of the ruined forest, and at its edges it was flickering. Like heat shimmer, except it was shadow. Like his outline was having difficulty deciding where Naruto ended and something else began. He looked back up at Kimimaro. The pale young man had gone still in a different way than before. The clinical detachment was still there, it was structural, part of who he was, but something had entered his expression that Naruto had not put there in any of the previous exchanges. It was very small. It was very specific. It was alertness. What are you? Kimimaro asked. Not rhetorically. Genuinely. I don't know yet, Naruto said, and he meant it more than he'd ever meant anything. But I'm about to find out. The heat in his chest made a decision. It didn't explode outward. That was the thing that would stay with Shikamaru for years afterward. When he tried to describe it to people who asked, he always started by saying it didn't explode. It didn't erupt, didn't crack the ground, didn't send out a pressure wave that knocked trees flat. It collapsed inward first. Like every molecule of Naruto Uzumaki decided to fall toward his center simultaneously, a gravity event that lasted one single breathless second, and then everything reversed. The sound it made was wrong. Not like chakra, which Shikamaru had always thought of as something between electricity and wind. This was resonant, like a struck bell the size of a building, a single note that went through bone and didn't echo because it was already everywhere. The trees in a 30-foot radius bent away from Naruto, not like an explosion, like a held breath. The smoke from the dispersed clones didn't clear. It collapsed, spiraling inward, and in the space where Naruto had been standing, he was still there. But the jacket was gone. Not torn, gone, the orange fabric simply not present anymore, and in its place the fur, dark, almost black red crimson that covered his arms, his torso, fading at the chest to something lighter, the color of dying fire. His hands were different, the fingers slightly longer, the knuckles wrong, nails that weren't nails anymore but weren't quite claws yet, something in between that made the anatomy feel foreign. The whisker marks on his face had deepened from suggestion to statement, 3 lines per side carved dark and deliberate, and his eyes, gold. Not the faint amber his eyes sometimes went when he was drawing deep on chakra. Gold, full iris, the pupils still round and human but framed in a color that belonged to nothing in the shinobi world's taxonomy, warm and brilliant and absolutely certain. The tail came last. It arrived the way the rest of it had, not explosively, not as a revelation, but as something that had always been there and was only now finished pretending not to be. It swept the air behind him, once, and the displaced air made the near trees sway. Shikamaru sat down. He didn't choose to, his legs made that decision without consulting him. Kimimaro had not moved. He was staring, and the clinical expression had fully broken open for the first time, replaced with something that was trying to reassemble itself into analysis but kept slipping off the edges of what his eyes were sending to his brain. That's, Kimimaro began. Yeah, Naruto said, and his voice had the same quality as before, lower, settled, coming from somewhere deeper, but it was still his voice. Still had the cadence, the rhythm. Just with something underneath it now that hadn't been there before, something that had the specific weight of certainty. I know how I look. Believe me, I'm getting used to it too. A pause. He flexed one hand, watching the not-quite claws, feeling the fur on his arms move with the motion. It's weird. He looked up. But not bad. He moved. He didn't charge. He didn't sprint. He stepped, one step, the way you step when you're crossing a room, and the step covered 30 feet. Kimimaro reacted like the trained warrior he was, arms coming up, bone spears extending, 3 points aimed at angles designed to skewer someone coming in at speed. Fast reflexes, intelligent geometry, all of it technically correct. Naruto caught 2 of the bone spears bare-handed, one in each fist, and stopped. The impact didn't move him. His feet didn't skid. The bones, which had pierced steel plates, which had split reinforced stone, which had gone through Naruto himself twice already in this fight, flexed under the grip of his hands and cracked. Not broke. Cracked. Because he was holding them, not shattering them. Like he was choosing to be careful. Kimimaro stared at his own extended bones, held like a man holds 2 sticks, and for the first time in the fight looked genuinely uncertain what to do next. Dance of the Clematis, Naruto said, echoing the name back at him. You named it. That means you're proud of it. He released the bone spears. They retracted. Do it again. The spin thing. I want to see it again. Kimimaro did. Not because Naruto asked, because it was his best option and he knew it. The rotation was perfect, the bone crown extending, 3 feet of reach in every direction, blades that had just demolished 30 shadow clones spinning at a speed that made them invisible. Naruto walked through it. Walked. Not leaped, not dodged, not phased. Walked, and the bone spikes hit him, several of them, clearly, impacts that Shikamaru could see landing, and the sound was wrong, 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 because it wasn't the wet sound of puncture or even the crack of bone against bone. It was the sound of contact that didn't find purchase, and Naruto's hand came out of the spin and caught Kimimaro by the collar. The rotation stopped. Kimimaro was lifted. Not dramatically, Naruto didn't swing him overhead or slam him into anything. He just lifted, steady and calm, one-handed, and held the pale young man at arm's length and looked at him with those gold eyes. Kimimaro's feet were a foot off the ground. His curse mark was fully active. He was, objectively, measurably, one of Orochimaru's most powerful warriors. And he was hanging from Naruto's grip like a kitten from its mother's mouth, and the expression on his face moved through several stages very quickly, disbelief, recalibration, something that might have been the beginning of wonder, and then a quiet, genuine acceptance. I see, he said softly. You are something different. Sasuke is coming home, Naruto said. No heat in it. No triumph. Just information. That's not something I'm negotiating on. That's not something you can stop. I'm telling you so you can make a decision. Kimimaro looked at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, his curse mark began to recede. I'm already dying, he said simply, and there was no self-pity in it, just the same factual quality he applied to everything. A disease that Orochimaru could have cured and chose not to. I have been loyal to a man who valued my utility over my life. He paused. Fighting you would be a worthy death. But I find I no longer particularly want to die for his reasons. He looked toward Sasuke's barrel. Take him. The retrieval team that follows won't be me. Naruto lowered him to the ground, released him, and stepped back. He watched Kimimaro for 2 full seconds, those gold eyes didn't blink, and then nodded once. Kimimaro walked into the forest and was gone. Shikamaru, from where he was sitting on the ground because his legs still hadn't fully reported back for duty, looked at Naruto standing there in his new skin with the tail moving slow and thoughtful behind him and the gold eyes looking after where Kimimaro had disappeared. Naruto. His voice was completely steady. He was proud of that. Yeah. What the hell just happened? Naruto turned, and for the first time since the transformation a grin broke across his face, wide, gap-toothed, entirely Naruto, completely at odds with the dark crimson fur and the alien gold eyes and the tail that swept the air like a pendulum. He scratched the back of his head with fingers that were slightly wrong and shrugged. Honestly? No idea. He looked at his hands again. Feels pretty good though. Shikamaru put his face in his palm. We need to check on the others. That killed the grin. Naruto was moving before Shikamaru finished the sentence, and his version of moving was no longer bounded by the same physics that governed everyone else. He covered ground in strides that were technically running but operated on a different scale, and the air displaced behind him smelled like ozone and something older, something that the animals in the forest went very quiet about. They found Lee first. He was unconscious, breathing, his body carrying the specific damage of someone who had gone far past their limits and paid for it in muscle fiber and bone. Naruto crouched over him, and those gold eyes went soft in a way that didn't belong to anything frightening. He fought Kimimaro like that? Naruto asked, looking at the damage map of Lee's injuries. He opened his gates, Shikamaru said, arriving beside him. With his weights. He managed to, he stopped. Drew a breath. He was trying to buy time. For us. Naruto was quiet for a moment. Then he straightened. He's going to be okay. You don't know that. Yeah, I do. No explanation. Just certainty, the new kind he wore like a second skin. He moved on. Neji was awake, barely, sitting upright against a tree with the specific controlled stillness of someone who had decided that sitting upright against a tree was the only option available. Several of his tenketsu were reversed. Naruto could see it somehow, the chakra flow visible to his changed eyes in a way it hadn't been before, like someone had turned a filter on that he couldn't turn off. Blue channels, disrupted, fighting themselves. It made him frown. Neji looked up at him and said absolutely nothing for 5 full seconds. Byakugan, he said finally, which meant his eyes were active and seeing everything, which meant he had a better view of what Naruto currently was than anyone else in the vicinity. His voice was its usual precise, uninflected quality. The chakra signature is, not from this world's taxonomy. He blinked. The Nine Tails is present but it's not driving this. Something else is the primary source. Something that was always there. You can see that? Naruto asked. I see chakra networks. Yours has a second network running alongside the first. It's been dormant. He paused. It isn't anymore. Great. Naruto crouched, looked at Neji's disrupted chakra points. Can you walk? Eventually. We'll carry Lee. You follow when you can. He stood. Looked at Shikamaru. Kiba. Southwest. Sakan and Yukon, Sound 4. He wasn't losing when I last heard him. Shikamaru's expression said he wasn't sure about the wasn't losing part but was choosing the most optimistic read. Naruto went southwest. He smelled Kiba before he found him, not unpleasant, just information, sent data that his changed nose was suddenly capable of processing like a language he'd always spoken but never translated before. Blood, sweat, dog fur, and underneath it the sharp mineral smell of someone fighting past pain. The clearing where Kiba and Akamaru faced Sakan and Yukon was a ruin of churned earth and scattered impact craters. Kiba was standing, which was the important thing, though standing was generous. He was braced, one knee slightly bent, Akamaru pressed against his leg. His jacket was torn across the left side. Sakan, or Yukon, Naruto had never learned to tell them apart, stood across from him with blood on his lip and an expression of furious contempt. You ran out of tricks, Sakan said. Both versions of them. I've got one more, Kiba said, and then Naruto arrived. He stepped into the clearing from between two broken trees, and Sakan went quiet with the immediate totality of a machine being unplugged. His eyes tracked over Naruto, the fur, the tail, the eyes, and the contempt in his face went through a rapid series of transformations that ended somewhere around genuine alarm. Akamaru made a very small sound. Then he sat down and wagged his tail once, which was his way of indicating he was going to let the humans sort this one out. Kiba stared. Then, because he was Kiba, "What the, Naruto, what is your tail doing here?" "Long story," Naruto said. He was looking at Sakan. Sakan took stock with the speed of someone who'd survived in Orochimaru's service by being good at rapid threat assessment. He looked at Naruto. He looked at the tail. He looked at the eyes. He calculated the math of the clearing: wounded partner host, tired Nen-ken, one half broken Inuzuka, and this thing in an orange jacket that had stepped out of the trees smelling like the deep end of chakra and something else entirely, something the primitive part of his brain was categorizing under don't. "This mission is," he started. "Over," Naruto said. Sakan ran. Yukon ran with him, because Yukon didn't have a choice in the matter given their biology. They were gone in 3 seconds, using body flicker, moving fast and not looking back. Kiba blinked. "Did you just scare one of the Sound 4 into running?" "Apparently. By standing there." "I walked in," Naruto said. "I'm counting that as doing something." Kiba looked at him for another long moment. Then he started laughing, high, ragged, exhausted laughter that had relief running through it like a thread. "What happened to you? You look like, I don't even know what you look like." "Neither do I." Naruto looked toward where Sasuke's barrel was. "Come on. We're getting Sasuke and going home." The word home sat in the air of the ruined clearing with a specific gravity, and Kiba stopped laughing and nodded, and Akamaru climbed to his feet, and the 4 of them, plus Shikamaru, who arrived 30 seconds later, plus Neji, who arrived 2 minutes after that at a careful walk with one hand on a tree, converged on the outcropping where the barrel waited. Naruto broke the seals on it without effort. He didn't analyze the seal work, didn't spend time unraveling the layering, he simply looked at the containment design with his changed eyes that saw chakra as a visible language and found the load-bearing point and pressed, and the seals came apart with the quiet efficiency of a knot that's been tied wrong and just needed someone to pull the right thread. The barrel opened. Sasuke was inside, breathing, curse mark beginning to fade as the seals that had been feeding it chakra dissolved, his face slack in unconsciousness. He looked smaller than he ever did awake. He looked like what he was, a 13-year-old kid who'd made a terrible decision and hadn't woken up yet to reckon with it. Naruto looked at him for a long moment. "Idiot," he said, not harshly. Almost gently. He reached in and hauled Sasuke up onto his shoulder in a carry that looked effortless, because it was. Shikamaru looked at the unconscious Sasuke, then at the transformed Naruto standing there with Sasuke over one shoulder and those gold eyes already scanning the tree-line, and made a sound that wasn't quite any emotion he had a clear name for. "All right," he said. He was tired. He was hurt. His strategy had been systematically broken apart by circumstances and then unexpectedly rebuilt by his teammate becoming something he had no category for. It had been a deeply troubling 45 minutes. "Let's go home." They moved through the forest, Naruto in front, always in front, the new gravity of him clearing the path the way a stone clears water, and the trees bent slightly away from him as he passed, and the animals went quiet, and the late afternoon light filtered down through the canopy and caught the dark crimson fur and the gold eyes and turned them into something that looked, if you were watching from the right angle, like a painting of something mythological. Behind him, his team walked in his wake. Neji watched the chakra network, the double-layered, impossible, ancient thing running alongside Naruto's ordinary system, and catalogued it with Hyuga precision, storing every detail, because his mind was the kind of mind that stored things for later even when later felt very far away. Kiba just kept glancing sidelong at Naruto and then looking away again, because looking directly at him for too long was doing something strange to Akamaru's composure. Shikamaru was running calculations. He ran them the whole way home. He didn't finish them before they reached the gates. He wasn't sure he'd finish them ever. The gates of Konoha appeared through the trees as the sun started its pull toward the horizon, painting the clouds above the walls in shades of orange that were, under the circumstances, an unfortunate choice of color scheme. 2 ANBU were stationed at the exterior. They saw the retrieval team and stepped forward, saw Sasuke, processed that, started to relax, and then one of them saw Naruto. His hand went to his weapon. Instinct, the deepest kind, bypassing thought. Naruto looked at him. Gold eyes, patient, tired, and carrying something in them that the ANBU operative would later describe in his incident report as a pressure that made threat response instinct feel insufficient as a framework. The hand came down from the weapon. Uzumaki Naruto, the ANBU said carefully. We'll need to, I know, Naruto said. His voice was tired now, not weak, just used. I know. Lead the way. They went through the gates with the last light of the day painting everything gold, and the 2 ANBU members walked on either side of the group, and neither of them walked next to Naruto specifically, maintaining a careful few extra feet of distance that they both pretended was procedural. Naruto noticed. He didn't say anything. He shifted Sasuke's weight on his shoulder, looked up at the Hokage mountain with its carved stone faces, the 4 faces of the people who'd led this village, the village that had looked at him for as long as he could remember and seen a monster, and his tail moved once behind him. Then he walked in through the gate, into the lights of the village, into whatever came next, and the transformation didn't recede and he didn't ask it to. For the first time in his life, Naruto Uzumaki felt like exactly what he was. He hadn't figured out yet what to call it. But it fit. Chapter 2, The World Has a New Smell. The hospital at night had a particular quality of silence that Naruto had always found uncomfortable, not peaceful, not restful, but the silence of held breath, of things being carefully monitored. He'd been in it enough times to know the smell by heart, antiseptic, bandage adhesive, the faint metallic ghost of blood that cleaning never quite erased. He knew which hallways echoed and which didn't. He knew that the third-floor nurses changed shift at 9 and that the vending machine near the stairwell dispensed ramen cups if you hit the side panel at exactly the right angle. What he didn't know was how to sit still in a waiting room chair when half the village was apparently awake and reorganizing its understanding of reality. He could hear them through the walls. Not individual words, the building was thick enough for that, but the quality of the sound outside was wrong for this hour. Too much of it. Too much movement, voices pitched at the frequency of people discussing something they didn't have the vocabulary for yet. He'd heard that frequency before, aimed at him, his whole life. It had always felt like standing in cold water. Tonight it felt like standing on ground. He leaned back in the chair and looked at the ceiling and let his tail rest across his knees like a very strange blanket, and he breathed, and he thought about Kimimaro's face when the bones failed to find purchase, and that thought led sideways to Lee, which made his chest tight in a way that had nothing to do with his new physiology. The fur is unsettling, said Tsunade from the doorway. She hadn't knocked. She didn't knock. She was the Hokage and this was her hospital and she had apparently decided that the normal social geometry of waiting rooms didn't apply when one of her genin had come home looking like a visiting delegate from a mythology that no one had written down yet. Naruto tilted his head to look at her. She was still in her Hokage robes, which meant she'd come directly from the tower, which meant someone had told her fast, which meant the ANBU reports moved quicker than he'd thought. Her face had the expression she wore when she was deciding how worried to be, not the open version of that, the one she let Shizen see, but the administrative version, assessment behind her eyes running calculations she wasn't going to share. It's weird for me too, Naruto said. He held up one hand and looked at it. The fur caught the low hospital light and did something warm with it. It doesn't come off. I know. I checked while you were waiting. She walked into the room and sat down in the chair across from him, not the chair beside him, which told him something about how she was framing this conversation. Lee is stable. 3 fractures, significant muscle trauma, 2 cracked ribs. He'll recover. A pause. Fully. It'll take time, but fully. Naruto breathed out. He hadn't realized he'd been holding that particular weight until it moved. Niji's chakra network disruption is resolving on its own, she continued. Kiba has a mild concussion and a laceration across his left shoulder that he's already trying to argue doesn't need stitches. Shikamaru has bruised ribs and is currently in the hallway outside trying to write a complete mission report from memory because he says the details will become imprecise if he waits until morning. She looked at him steadily. Sasuke is in a medically induced sleep while we let the curse mark energy dissipate safely. He'll be awake in 6 hours. Okay. Naruto nodded. Okay. Good. Now. She leaned forward, elbows on knees, and her voice dropped into the register that meant they were past the medical briefing. Talk. I don't know what happened. I know you don't. Talk anyway. So he did. He told it straight, the fight, the ground giving, the moment Kimimaro arrived and the realization that the math wasn't going to work, Lee already down, the edges failing. He described the heat, the pressure, the way it hadn't felt violent, the way it had felt like something settling rather than something breaking. He told her about walking through the bone spin, about holding the spears, about Kimimaro's face. He was honest about all of it and he didn't edit anything because he'd learned, slowly and not without difficulty, that editing things for Tsunade was a waste of both their time. She listened without interrupting, which was unusual. She was generally a high-interrupt conversationalist. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she reached forward and took his hand, the changed one, the slightly wrong fingers, the fur, and turned it over in both of hers in a motion that was half diagnostic and half something else, something that would have looked, to anyone watching, like a grandmother checking that a child was in one piece. The Ninetales chakra is present, she said. I can feel it. But it's not the primary source of this. There's something underneath it. Something I have no reference for. She turned his hand back over, released it. I've been a medic for 30 years. I've seen Bijou chakra, I've seen Kekkei Genkai, I've seen forbidden techniques and cursed seals and things that don't have names. This is none of those. She met his eyes, the gold ones, which she'd been very professionally not reacting to this entire time. Does it feel like you? The question landed in a different place than medical questions usually did. Yeah, Naruto said slowly. That's the thing. It feels more like me than normal does. Like I was wearing something that didn't fit before and now I'm not. He frowned. Is that bad? I don't know yet. She stood. Get some sleep. There's a room on the 3rd floor, private, away from the main ward. You're staying here tonight. Not a request. Okay. And Naruto. She stopped in the doorway. The council wants an emergency session tomorrow morning. Her voice was very level. They've already sent 3 messages to my office in the last 2 hours. Naruto looked at her. I know, she said, before he could say anything. I know. Get some sleep. She left, and the door closed, and Naruto sat in the waiting room for another few minutes, tail moving in a slow, thoughtful arc, gold eyes tracking the middle distance, before he got up and went to find the 3rd floor room. He fell asleep in about 45 seconds, which was the fastest he'd ever managed in a hospital, and he didn't dream about anything at all. Jiraiya arrived at dawn. Not from the road, from the roof, because he was Jiraiya and doorways were for people without something to prove. Naruto heard him land on the roof above his room and tracked the footsteps across the tile, and by the time the window opened he was already sitting up in the bed, back against the headboard, watching the window with calm gold eyes. Jiraiya came through the window head first, in the ungainly way of someone who'd made an entrance plan but miscalculated the window-to-ceiling ratio, and straightened up with his white mane settling around his shoulders and his toad eyes finding Naruto's face and then the rest of Naruto and going very, very still. The man had written entire novel series. He'd trained the 4th Hokage. He'd fought wars. He went very still in the way of someone whose processing speed was excellent but had just received input that was requiring extra time. Hey, pervy sage, Naruto said. Hey, Jiraiya said, faintly. He stood there for another 3 seconds. Then he walked to the bed and sat on the edge of it, not at the far end, right next to Naruto, and reached out without asking permission and put one hand on the side of Naruto's face the way someone touches a thing they want to confirm is real. He looked at the whisker marks, dark and deliberate. He looked at the gold eyes. He looked at the fur on Naruto's arms where they came out of the short hospital sleeves. "Does it hurt?" he asked. "No." "How do you feel?" "Fine." "Good. Really good, actually." Naruto watched him. "You're doing the thing where you're not saying what you're thinking." "I'm thinking several things and they're fighting for priority." Jiraiya dropped his hand. He leaned back on one arm and looked at the ceiling. "I've been gathering intelligence for 2 years. I've seen things, heard things. There's a category of power that exists in older texts, texts that predate the village system, predate chakra theory as we currently understand it. They describe transformations that weren't chakra-based. Something older. Something that was in this world before chakra became the dominant energy system." He paused. "I thought they were mythology. And now? And now my student's kid is sitting in a hospital bed with a tail and eyes the color of something that shouldn't exist, and I'm reconsidering the definition of mythology." He sat back up and looked at Naruto directly. "The Nine Tails didn't do this. Did it? I don't think so. It's still there. I can feel it. But it wasn't the one who moved." Naruto struggled for the language. It was like the Nine Tails was already in the room and then something else walked in through a different door. Jiraiya absorbed that. His expression did something complicated. "Your father sealed the Nine Tails in you as a vessel, not just a prison. He believed you had the potential to become something that would need that much power as a starting point." He said the last 2 words carefully. "I thought I understood what he meant. I'm now less certain." Naruto looked at him. "Did he know about this? About, whatever this is?" "No." Jiraiya's voice was certain. "If he'd known, he would have told me. He told me everything. A beat. Almost everything." Something moved across his face that was too fast to read and then was gone. "We need to train. Not to control it, I don't think control is the right frame. To understand what it is. What it can actually do. We can do that. Also." Jiraiya's expression shifted, took on the particular cast that meant he was about to say something true that he'd rather not say. "The village is awake. Has been all night. There are people who are going to look at you and see a threat. The council," Tsunade mentioned. "The council is going to be very loud and very stupid about this in ways that are going to require management." He stood. "I'll handle the political architecture. You focus on not breaking anything irreplaceable." "I wasn't going to break anything. You walked through the hospital lobby last night with a tail, Naruto. You broke 3 nurses' composure and 1 orderly's clipboard, which he snapped in half by accident while staring at you." Jiraiya was already heading for the window. "That's a data point. That's not my fault." "No. But it's still a data point." He stopped at the window, looked back. Something in his expression had moved past the analysis, past the old text references and political architecture, down to something simpler and more honest. "You brought the team home. You brought Sasuke home." His voice was quieter. "Minato would have," he stopped. "Started again. I'm proud of you. That's all." He went back out the window before Naruto could respond, which was probably intentional. Naruto sat in the hospital room with morning light coming in through the open window and the sound of Konoha waking up drifting up from the streets below, and he pressed the back of his head against the headboard, and he was quiet for a while, and the tail moved in a slow arc, and his eyes were gold and very bright in the new light. The council chamber smelled like old wood and older opinions. Naruto had been in this room once before, peripherally, during the Chunin exam preliminaries aftermath. He'd been brought in through a side entrance then, presented as a subject of discussion rather than a participant. Today he walked in through the main doors, which opened because he pushed them, and he walked to the center of the room and stood there, and the assembled faces, clan heads, civilian council representatives, and the two elders who Naruto had always thought of as the permanent furniture of Konoha's bad decisions, looked at him. Tsunade was already seated at the head of the room. Jiraiya stood to her left with his arms folded and an expression so neutral it was basically a threat. Hamura and Koharu, the two elders, were in their customary seats to Tsunade's right, and they were looking at Naruto with the expressions of people who had prepared extensively for this conversation and were now discovering that extensive preparation had not covered the actual event. Hamura found his voice first. This is unprecedented. Most things are, the first time, Naruto said. Several of the clan heads made small involuntary sounds. Inoichi Yamanaka, seated to the left with his hands folded on the table, had the look of someone very carefully not reacting to anything. Hayashi Hyuga, by contrast, had his Byakugan active, subtle, but Naruto could see it, could see the veins at his temples, and was looking at Naruto's chakra network with an expression that was trying very hard to stay neutral and not quite making it. The Nine Tails, Koharu began. Isn't the primary driver of this, Naruto said. The Nine Tails is still sealed. If it had broken loose, you'd know. The village would look different. He said it without heat. Just information. What happened is something else. I don't have a complete explanation for it yet. That's precisely the problem, Hamura said. An unexplained power event of this magnitude, in a Jinchuriki during an active mission, with no, I brought the team home. Naruto's voice didn't rise. Lee, Neji, Kiba, Shikamaru, all of them. I retrieved Sasuke. The Sound Four either fled or withdrew. Kimimaro, one of Orochimaru's most dangerous warriors, chose to stand down. He looked at Hamura steadily. The mission succeeded. The team is alive. A pause. What's the problem? The room was quiet in a way that had texture. Koharu leaned forward. The problem, Uzumaki, is that a power of this nature, unclassified, uncontrolled, of unknown origin, represents a variable that this village cannot, Koharu-sama. Hayashi's voice came from the left, quiet and precise and carrying the absolute authority of a man who had run the Hyuga clan for decades. He had not moved from his seat. My Byakugan has been observing the boy's chakra network since he entered this room. I will tell you what I see, because I believe it is relevant. He did not wait for acknowledgement. There are two chakra networks present. The original, and a secondary system that has been dormant, I believe since birth, possibly longer. The secondary system is active. It is stable. There is no chakra disruption, no seal degradation, no evidence of external influence or corruption. A pause. It is simply there. As though it was always there, waiting. The room absorbed that. Hayashi-sama, Naruto said, and Hayashi turned those pale, terrible eyes toward him. Can you see what it is? No. For a man of Hayashi's precision, the admission cost something. I've never seen anything like it. But I can tell you what it isn't. It isn't a threat to the seal. It isn't Bijou chakra. It isn't a foreign jutsu. Whatever it is, he paused, and something moved through his expression. It's native. It belongs to you as much as your heartbeat does. Hamura opened his mouth. If anyone in this room, Tsunade's voice came off the head of the table like a door slamming, not loud but final, proposes any action involving containment, suppression, or any modification of Uzumaki Naruto, I will personally ensure that proposal and whoever made it are introduced to consequences they will find memorable. She looked at the two elders with the specific calm of someone who is not angry, who is past anger, who has arrived at a place that is quieter and more permanent than anger. He is a Konoha shinobi. He completed a mission. He brought his team home. This council's role in this matter is to receive that information and update its records accordingly. Another silence. This one lasted longer. Shikaku Nara, who had been silent in the corner with the specific stillness of a very intelligent person who has already finished processing the situation and is waiting for everyone else to catch up, cleared his throat. The external security implications are more pressing than the internal ones, he said. If Naruto's transformation was visible to anyone outside our borders, and given the scale of the chakra event in the forest, it likely was, then we should expect other parties to have acquired information. The question isn't what we do about Naruto. The question is what we do about everyone else's reaction to Naruto. This reframed the room. Naruto watched it happen, the shift from looking at him as the problem to looking at him as the variable that created external problems. It wasn't comfortable exactly, but it was more useful. Akatsuki, Jiraiya said from the wall. He said just the word, and let it do its own work. Several people around the table went a shade quieter. Their existing interest in Naruto was as a Jinchuriki, Jiraiya continued. What happened in that forest yesterday is going to change that calculation in ways we can't fully predict yet. We need to operate on the assumption that the timeline for any Akatsuki action involving Naruto has compressed significantly. He looked at Tsunade. He needs training time. Real training time. The kind where we actually find the edges of this thing. Tsunade nodded. Arranged. She looked at the room. This session is concluded. Shikaku, I want projections on external threat vectors by end of day. Hayashi, if you're willing, I'd appreciate written documentation of your Byakugan observations. She stood. Everyone else, Naruto is a Konoha shinobi. He is not a subject of council jurisdiction. Anyone who needs reminding of that distinction should come speak to me privately. The tone made it clear that no one actually wanted to do that. Dismissed. People filed out. Naruto stayed where he was in the center of the room until it had emptied to just Tsunade and Jiraiya, and then he turned and looked at his hands again, turning them palm up and then palm down, watching the light move across the fur. That went okay, he said. It went fine, Tsunade said. The ones who wanted to push will push later, through different channels. But later is better than now. She looked at him. How are you actually doing? I want to see Sasuke. He's awake. She checked the window, morning was fully established now, the village in its daytime rhythm outside. Has been for about an hour. He's been told you're in the building. A pause. He hasn't asked to see you. Naruto absorbed that. It didn't break his face. Okay. That doesn't mean, I know what it means and what it doesn't. He was already moving toward the door. I'm going anyway. Jiraiya, from the wall, naturally. Sasuke was sitting up in bed when Naruto pushed the door open, and he looked, physically, almost entirely like himself. The curse mark faded to nothing on his skin, his color returned, the 4 drip in his left arm the only concession to the previous day's events. He looked like someone who had calculated the exact minimum of recovery necessary and was already impatient with even that. He looked at Naruto standing in the doorway. His face did something that started as his default expression, the neutral, slightly elevated chin look that he wore like armor, and then the default expression ran into the actual visual information of Naruto's current state, and the armor developed a series of very small hairline cracks that Naruto would have missed if he hadn't been looking with eyes that were now considerably better than they used to be. You look terrible, Sasuke said. You look like someone put you in a barrel, Naruto said. A silence. Not hostile. Something else, tentative, the way silence gets when it's carrying more than either party wants to be the one to put into words first. Naruto walked in and sat down in the chair beside the bed and looked at Sasuke, and Sasuke looked back at him, and neither of them said anything for a moment that stretched long enough to have weather. Your eyes are different, Sasuke said finally. Yeah. And you have a tail. Yes. I know. Sasuke looked at the tail where it rested across the back of the chair. He looked at it with the specific expression of someone who is processing something that violates several of their working assumptions about how the world is organized. Then he looked back at Naruto's face. What happened? So Naruto told him. Shorter version than he'd given Tsunade, hitting the shape of it, the emotional logic of it, not the medical detail. He talked about Kimimaro and the bones not finding purchase and walking through the spin. He talked about carrying Sasuke out and the ANBU at the gate. He didn't talk about Jiraiya's window entrance or the council room, because those weren't the relevant parts. Sasuke listened. His expression during the telling was complicated. It cycled through things too quickly for Naruto to read all of them, and some of the ones he did catch were things he wasn't sure he had the right name for on Sasuke's face. They looked new. Or old, surfaced. One of them looked, briefly, like something in the vicinity of awe, and it was gone so fast Naruto almost decided he'd imagined it. Almost. You carried me the whole way back, Sasuke said. It wasn't a question. You were unconscious. What else would I do, drag you? You could have put me on a stretcher. You're welcome, Naruto said. Another silence. Sasuke looked at the window. Outside, Konoha was fully awake and fully loud with the specific energy of a village that has had something happen and is processing it in all directions simultaneously. There were, and Naruto had noticed this on the way up, people in the street who were just looking at the hospital building. Not doing anything. Just looking. The sound for, Sasuke said, still looking at the window. They're retreating back to Orochimaru. Probably. He'll know what happened. With you. He turned from the window. He'll want you. More than he wanted me. Naruto raised an eyebrow. He wanted you pretty badly. For my eyes. For the Sharingan. That's a known quantity. Sasuke's voice was flat, factual, not self-pitying, just precise. You're an unknown quantity now. Orochimaru collects unknown quantities. He'll pivot. A pause. I'm telling you that as information, not as, he stopped. Reconfigured whatever he'd been about to say. Just information. I heard you. Naruto leaned back in the chair. He can want whatever he wants. Doesn't change anything. Sasuke looked at him, really looked, the way he did when he was running the Sharingan's analysis protocols even without activating them, the habit of observation that ran deeper than the dojutsu. He looked at the gold eyes and the fur and the tail, and he looked at the way Naruto was sitting, not guarded, not performing anything, just there, occupying the chair the way someone occupies a space when they're not worried about what the space might think. Sasuke had never seen Naruto not worried, at some level, about what a space might think. He'd been very good at hiding it. The hiding itself had been a kind of bravery Sasuke had never once acknowledged aloud. Naruto wasn't hiding anything now. There was nothing to hide behind. You're not going back, Naruto said. Not aggressive. Not a question. Just the declaration of something he'd decided was settled. Sasuke's jaw shifted. I know you haven't decided that yet, Naruto said, reading him with those new eyes that saw too much. But I'm telling you now so you have time to get used to the idea. He leaned forward, elbows on knees, gold eyes direct and unblinking. I'm not going to let you leave, Sasuke. Not because the village says so. Because I say so. Because you're my teammate and I know what you think power is, and I'm telling you, as someone who just became the most powerful thing in that forest, power isn't a destination. It doesn't fix what's broken. His voice didn't rise. Itachi will still be Itachi after you're strong enough to kill him. And you'll still be you. And if you've burned everything down to get there, you'll be a version of you that you don't want to be. Sasuke stared at him. You didn't ask for my opinion, he said finally. No. I gave it for free. Naruto sat back. Because that's what people who give a damn do. A very long silence. Your tail is moving, Sasuke said. Naruto looked back. The tail was indeed moving, slowly, the way it did when he was thinking hard about something. It does that. It's very distracting. Sorry. No, you're not. No, Naruto agreed, and grinned, the real one, wide and gap-toothed and entirely Naruto, I'm not. Something at the corner of Sasuke's mouth moved. It wasn't a smile. It was the structural component from which smiles are made, before they become smiles, the thing that exists in the territory between not smiling and almost. It lasted about a second and then his face reassembled itself. But Naruto saw it. The gold eyes saw everything. The training ground that Tsunade allocated was Training Ground 7, which Naruto thought was either deliberate symbolism or a practical decision based on it being the most isolated facility with the most reinforced infrastructure. Probably both. Tsunade was efficient about her symbolism. Jiraiya was already there when Naruto arrived at mid-afternoon, sitting on top of one of the training posts with his arms folded, looking like a gargoyle that had developed opinions. Ground rules, Jiraiya said without preamble. No holding back. Whatever instinct tells you to do, follow it. Don't think, react. I need to see what the baseline is. What are you going to do? Hit you. He jumped off the post, landed, cracked his knuckles. Hard. Okay. Naruto rolled his shoulders. Don't hold back either. Jiraiya looked at him. I wasn't planning to. Good. Jiraiya summoned, signed, and opened with a Rasengan that he launched from 15 feet, not the standard arm range application but thrown, the way he developed it for long distance, a spinning sphere of chakra that compressed the air in front of it into a visible bow wave as it came. Naruto sidestepped it. Not dodged, sidestepped, a lateral movement of about 2 feet, unhurried, the Rasengan passing close enough to ruffle the fur on his arm. He felt it go by. He watched it impact the training post behind him and detonate in a spray of wood chips and compressed air. Jiraiya's eyes were sharp. Again. He was already moving. What followed was less a sparring session and more a sustained physical argument in which Jiraiya threw everything he had at Naruto with escalating scale, Rasengan variations, summoning, water techniques, earth techniques, the full infrastructure of one of the world's most decorated shinobi, and Naruto moved through all of it with the natural, unthinking ease of water finding its level. Not because he was predicting the attacks. Not because his reflexes were simply faster, though they were. Because his body knew, in some deep pre-analytical way, where the danger was and what the correct position was, and it moved before his brain formed the thought to move, and the gap between stimulus and response had compressed to something that made Jiraiya's technical precision feel, for the first time in a long time, like it was talking to a wall. 40 minutes in, there was a crater. The crater was primarily the result of Naruto responding to a particularly aggressive summoning combined technique with a counter that his body had elected to execute and his conscious mind had not fully approved first, a movement that generated a shockwave, ground impact, and a pressure event that had made the birds leave the nearby tree line in a single startled mass exodus. Jiraiya stood at the edge of the crater and looked down at it. It was about 20 feet across and 6 feet deep. The training post that had been standing in that area was in several locations, none of which were the original. Okay, Jiraiya said. Sorry, Naruto said from beside the crater. He was breathing slightly harder than usual. Not much. I didn't know that was going to, don't be sorry. Jiraiya looked up from the crater. That was, I want you to understand what just happened. I put everything I had into that combination. Everything. Full scale. He paused. You hit harder. Naruto looked at the crater. Then at his hands. By accident. Yes. Jiraiya looked at him steadily. Naruto. You need to understand your position. He said it carefully, not dramatically, the way he said things when he wanted them to stick. There are 5 Kage in the world. There are 7 remaining Jinchuriki. There are 13 confirmed Akatsuki members. There are 2 Sannin, one of whom is me, one of whom is Orochimaru. He gestured at the crater. None of those people can do this. Naruto was quiet. That makes you a target of a very specific kind, Jiraiya said. Not just because you're powerful, because you're an unknown quantity that existing power structures can't account for. That makes you dangerous to people who've built their security on being the most dangerous thing in the room. He looked at the crater one more time. We need to keep training. But I want you to sit with that. What it means. Naruto looked out across the training ground, the churned earth, the missing trees, the absent birds, the late afternoon sky going amber above all of it. It means, he said slowly, that Sasuke thinking he needs to go to Orochimaru to get strong enough, that math is broken. That's not where power is. Jiraiya looked at him. Power's here, Naruto said. Not arrogantly, with a kind of clear-eyed gravity that had nothing to do with arrogance, which requires insecurity at its core. It was always here. I just didn't know what door to open. He turned. So let's figure out what else is behind the door. Jiraiya looked at him for a long moment, at the gold eyes and the crimson fur and the tail sweeping the air, at the 13-year-old kid who was carrying something ancient and enormous with the matter-of-fact comfort of someone who's found their footing. Yeah, Jiraiya said. Let's do that. Somewhere above the village, a hawk circled in the amber sky, and no one noticed it until much later, and by then the message it was carrying had already arrived. Chapter 3, Shadows Move Early. The hawk reached Akatsuki's nearest relay point in 36 hours, which was fast. The message it carried was 3 sentences. The first described the chakra event in the forest outside Konoha in terms that were clinical and precise. The second named the source. The third said, the Jinchuriki has changed. Recommend immediate reassessment of all existing plans. The relay point was a cave system in the mountain range north of the land of rice fields, and the person who received the message read it twice, folded it, and sat in silence for a duration that the messenger hawk found uncomfortable enough to shuffle its feet on the perch. Then Pain said, call a gathering. They didn't meet in person, they never did, if it could be avoided. The projected forms assembled in the cave like ghosts convened for a specific haunting, each one flickering slightly at the edges, the technique that allowed remote communication across vast distances carrying its usual visual artifacts. Conan was the only one physically present, standing at Pain's left with her paper wings folded and her expression its customary unreadable stillness. Kisame was the first to speak, because Kisame was always the first to speak when he sensed that the room had an opinion it was being polite about. So the kid with the fox finally decided to be interesting. That's one way to frame it, Itachi said from across the cave, his projected form carrying the same quality of deliberate stillness as always, his Sharingan inactive, his hands at his sides. What's the other way? The accurate way. Itachi's voice was measured. A power event of this scale, emerging from a sealed Jinchuriki during a retrieval mission in the field, with no warning indicators in any of our existing intelligence, that means our model of Uzumaki Naruto was incomplete. Incomplete models produce bad decisions. He paused. We should update before we act. Update how? This from Kakuzu, who was interested in things primarily as they related to cost and bounty value. The Nine Tails is still the Nine Tails. The extraction method doesn't change based on the hosts, it's not the Nine Tails. Pain's voice came from everywhere and nowhere, the particular quality of it that always made the air feel thinner. Read the report again. The observer was specific. The Nine Tails chakra was present but secondary. Something else was the primary source. Something that neutralized Kimimaro. The name landed in the cave like a dropped stone into still water. Kimimaro was not someone whose name got dropped lightly. Kimimaro didn't lose, Kisame said, but his tone had shifted slightly. He withdrew. After being physically restrained, Pain said. One-handed. By a 13-year-old. Another pause. Kimimaro in stage 2. The same Kimimaro who fought through terminal illness for Orochimaru's cause. He withdrew. Kisame had nothing to say to that, which was its own kind of statement. Itachi had not moved. His eyes were on the middle distance, processing something internal at the speed he always processed things, which was faster than the conversation warranted and slower than his conclusions deserved. He said, quietly, into the silence Kisame had left, "He'll want to bring him home." Everyone understood who he referred to and what home meant. "That's not our concern," Pain said. "It will affect timing. If Orochimaru moves on the boy, then Orochimaru discovers what Kimimaro discovered." Pain looked at the assembled forms. "We do not move on Uzumaki Naruto prematurely. We do not move on him with insufficient information. We observe. We revise." A pause that carried the specific weight of a decision being made behind it. "And we understand what we're dealing with before we reach for it." Itachi looked at his hands for a moment. Then back up. "Understood." He was gone before anyone confirmed the gathering closed, which was standard for him, and if his departure was slightly faster than usual, no one said so. Orochimaru heard the report from Kabuto at a table covered in open scrolls, with the particular quality of focused stillness he brought to things that interested him, and when Kabuto finished delivering it Orochimaru was quiet long enough that the candles in the room burned noticeably lower. "Stage 2, he said. Kimimaro at Stage 2 was physically restrained. One-handed, according to the Sound 4's account. They were not entirely coherent when they arrived, so I've applied a reliability adjustment, but the core facts are consistent across all 4 testimonies." Kabuto pushed his glasses up. He walked through the dance of the clematis. The bones didn't penetrate. A pause. And Kimimaro chose to withdraw rather than fight to conclusion. Orochimaru looked up from the scrolls. "Kimimaro chose." "Yes. He's never chosen anything except to follow my instructions." "I know." Orochimaru sat back in his chair, and the expression on his face was the one that Kabuto had learned to be careful about, not anger, not alarm, but the specific lit quality of genuine scientific interest, the look that preceded the most dangerous periods of productivity. His golden eyes, slit-pupilled, inhuman, the result of years of body modification work, caught the candlelight. "I want the boy," he said simply. Kabuto had anticipated this. He had, in fact, spent the walk from the intelligence room to this study preparing for it. Orochimaru-sama. The Ninetales aside, what happened in that forest indicates a level of, I know what it indicates. Orochimaru stood, moved to the window that overlooked the sound training grounds below. Several of his experiments were at work in the torchlight, modified bodies, enhanced physiologies, the products of years of research that had taken him to the edge of what was possible and then past it. He looked at them the way a painter looks at old work, appreciative, but aware of growth. The Ninetales was always the primary interest. A bijou sealed inside a human body, imagine the potential. Imagine what I could do with that vessel. He turned from the window. But if there's a second power source in that body, something ancient, something that doesn't follow the existing taxonomy, he smiled, and it reached his eyes in a way that meant nothing good for whoever was the object of it. The boy isn't just a vessel anymore. He's a question. And I don't leave questions unanswered. The retrieval approach will need to be elegant. Orochimaru moved back to the table, bent over a scroll, began writing. Not a frontal approach. Something surgical. He needs to be separated from Konoha's infrastructure, from Jiraiya specifically, and from the Hokage's protective umbrella. He wrote for 30 seconds without speaking. I need a reason for him to be outside the walls. Something that feels like a real mission. Something that feels safe enough that Konoha sends him with a small team rather than an army. He looked up. Create me a situation, Kabuto. Something in the border territories. Something that looks like a threat worth investigating but not worth mobilizing for. He capped the pen. And make it convincing. He's not stupid. Kabuto nodded, already running logistics. Then, and if he can't be contained once we have him outside the walls? Orochimaru looked at him for a moment. Then we find out what the limits are. He picked up the scroll. That's what experiments are for. Kabuto left. Orochimaru stood at his table in the candlelight with the scroll in his hands and the notes he'd been making, long columns of physiological data, theoretical chakra network models, hypothetical extraction approaches, and he looked at all of it with that lit, interested expression, and somewhere underneath the scientific interest was something older and less rational that he would not have named if you'd asked him but that operated on the same frequency as the sound Kimimaro's name had made. When pain dropped it in the Akatsuki cave. Caution. Very deep, very old, very unwilling to announce itself. He began writing faster. Training Ground 7 had developed a reputation in the 2 weeks since the retrieval mission that Naruto found both flattering and slightly excessive. Shinobi from other teams had started taking longer routes past it during morning runs. The ANBU assigned to the outer perimeter had rotated through 3 different two-man teams because, apparently, sustained proximity to the training sessions was affecting people's calibration for what normal looked like. Naruto thought that was their problem. This particular morning had started at 5 with Jiraiya arriving through the window again. He'd apparently decided that windows were his committed entrance point now and Naruto had stopped arguing about it, and an instruction that consisted entirely of, "Today we find the ceiling." "Is there a ceiling?" Naruto asked. Jiraiya had looked at him for a second. "Let's hope so." The first 2 hours were chakra work, not control in the traditional sense, because the secondary network didn't respond to traditional control exercises the way Naruto's primary network did. It responded to intent, which was a conceptually Messier framework. You didn't direct it, you declared what you needed, and it either agreed or it didn't, and the degree to which it agreed was related to something that Jiraiya's best theoretical framework called resonance and Naruto called whether I mean it. He almost always meant it. The output of those 2 hours was a series of exercises that had started as targeted chakra precision drills and graduated, through the organic logic of what Naruto's body kept doing instead of what was planned, into something more like a full-scale geological event. 3 of the training post lines were resting in new geography. A section of the back wall had structural opinions about its own continued existence. Naruto stood in the middle of it, not breathing hard, watching the dust settle. "Speed," Jiraiya said from the perimeter. He had adopted a position near the outer boundary that he framed as observation post, and that Naruto privately thought was also just a reasonable distance from the impact zones. The speed isn't chakra-assisted the way it normally would be. Your body is doing something metabolically that I can't fully account for. It's not body flicker. It's not enhanced muscle output through chakra infusion. It's something intrinsic. He made a note on the scroll he'd been filling for 2 weeks. Which means it doesn't deplete the way chakra-based speed does. "I noticed," Naruto said. "I'm not running out. That's the thing I keep coming back to." Jiraiya lowered the scroll. In a conventional fight, attrition is the great equalizer. Bijou chakra gives you more to work with than most people, but even that has limits that can be reached. He gestured at the training ground. "I've been watching your output for 2 weeks and I haven't seen the floor of this. I don't know if there is a floor." "There probably is," Naruto said. "Maybe." Jiraiya didn't sound convinced. "Can you feel a limit when you push?" Naruto thought about it honestly, the way he'd learned to think about questions like this, not the answer he thought Jiraiya wanted, not the answer that made him sound less alarming, just the actual answer. "No. It feels like, you know when you push your chakra hard and you feel the wall coming. The burning starts, and you know the next push is going to hurt and the one after that is going to be real trouble." He looked at his hands. "I don't get that feeling with this. It's like the wall isn't, like I've been moved to a room where the walls are much further away." He frowned. "Maybe further than I can run." Jiraiya was very quiet for a moment. "Right," he said eventually. "Okay." He rolled up the scroll and put it away and cracked his knuckles and stepped off the perimeter for the first time all morning. Naruto watched him walk into the training ground, picking his way around the new topography, and come to a stop 20 feet away. Full summons, Jiraiya said. Gamabunta. I want to see how you handle the scale. Naruto felt something in his chest that was adjacent to anticipation. You're serious? No, I frequently summon Gamabunta as a conversational gesture. Jiraiya bit his thumb, ran through signs at speed, slammed his palm into the ground. The summoning explosion was considerable. The shock wave knocked loose earth back across the training ground in a wave. Gamabunta arrived in the specific way giant things arrive, displacing air, displacing sound, the ground registering opinion about his weight, his toad form enormous against the morning sky, arms crossed, one enormous eye already settling on Naruto with the quality of someone who was expecting to be unimpressed and finding the situation requiring revision. That the one? Gamabunta said. His voice was the voice of something very large and very old. That's the one, Jiraiya confirmed. Gamabunta looked at Naruto for a long time. Not at the fur or the tail specifically, at him, at whatever it was that the toad summon's ancient instincts were reading that human senses translated into fur and tail and gold eyes. His enormous throat worked once. Yeah, Jiraiya said. How do you want to do this? Simple. You attack. He responds. Gamabunta looked down at Naruto, who was looking back up at him with those gold eyes and the easy, grounded posture that was just how Naruto stood now, centered, unguarded, not performing confidence but simply having it as a structural feature. Kid, the great toad said. Last time I worked with you, you were a snot-nosed 12-year-old riding on my head and directing my movements through screaming. I remember, Naruto said. You've changed. A little. Gamabunta's throat worked again. Don't you dare make me feel things this early in the morning. He uncrossed his arms, and his hand, the size of a small house, came down. What followed was 30 minutes that Jiraiya spent mostly at the perimeter writing very fast, occasionally stopping to stare at something that his pen couldn't catch up with and then writing faster to compensate. Gamabunta was not being gentle, couldn't be gentle, not while actually testing something, and the scale of the engagement meant that the training ground was being rewritten in real time, new craters, new ridgelines of displaced earth, the back wall now having no structural opinions because the back wall was gone. Naruto moved through it. Not past it, not around it, through, making contact, redirecting, at one point planting both feet on Gamabunta's descending palm and pushing back, and the sound that made was the kind of sound that brought 3 ANBU out of the treeline to check on the status of the village's structural integrity. Gamabunta's palm stopped. Not bounced, not deflected, stopped, and the great toad looked at the boy on his hand with an expression that was the toad equivalent of needing to sit down. Jiraiya, Gamabunta said slowly. I know, Jiraiya said. This is, I know. Gamabunta lowered his hand, slowly, and set it on the churned ground, and Naruto stepped off it and landed and shook the dust off his shoulders and looked up at the enormous toad. Good, he asked. Gamabunta looked at him for a long time. Kid, he said finally. Your father would have, he stopped. He was the best I ever worked with. In 40 years of summoning contracts, best I ever worked with. Another pause. I think he'd have something to say about watching this. Naruto's expression shifted. Just for a moment, something moving through the gold eyes that was complicated and layered, the specific quality of emotions that don't have clean names. Then it settled back into the groundedness. Maybe someday I'll get to ask him, he said. Gamabunta made a sound that was maybe a laugh and maybe something else. Then he was gone, the reverse summoning taking him home in a burst of smoke that cleared to reveal the thoroughly reorganized training ground and Jiraiya standing at what used to be the perimeter with a scroll that he'd needed to unroll a second time. Naruto looked over at him. How bad is it? The training ground? Jiraiya gestured at the landscape that bore almost no resemblance to the one they'd started in. Tsunade is going to, not the training ground. The scroll. The data. He walked over. What does it actually say? Jiraiya looked at the scroll. Then at Naruto. Then at the scroll again. He rolled it up. It says that I need to rewrite everything I know about the upper range of what shinobi combat can look like. He tucked the scroll away. It says that anyone who decides to make an enemy of you in their lifetime, is making a category error. He met Naruto's eyes. It says you're ready for real missions again. High risk, outside the walls. Which is going to happen whether I say you're ready or not, so it's better that I say it. You think something's coming. I think several things are coming, from several directions, at slightly different speeds. Jiraiya started walking toward the exit of the former training ground. And I think you should know, whatever comes, the answer isn't to be careful. The answer is to be you. All the way. Don't manage yourself for other people's comfort. He glanced back. You've been managing yourself for other people's comfort your whole life. That's over. Naruto fell into step beside him. The tail moved behind him, unhurried. I know, he said. Sasuke found him at the river that evening. Not by accident, nothing Sasuke did was by accident, and the specific path from the hospital to this particular stretch of the river that ran behind the eastern training grounds was not a path anyone walked without intention. He'd been discharged that afternoon. He was moving carefully, but he was moving, which meant the curse mark residue had cleared enough for his body to insist on vertical. Naruto was sitting on a flat rock at the river's edge, feet in the water, watching the current. His reflection looked strange and familiar at the same time, the gold eyes catching the last of the sun, the dark fur, the tail that draped into the water and moved with the current. Sasuke sat down on the rock beside him. Not far away. The normal distance between them when they'd been doing something comfortable together, which was not a distance they'd had a name for and which was now charged with everything that had happened and everything that hadn't been said. They sat for a while without talking. A heron landed upstream and regarded them with the profound indifference of a bird that has decided to be a heron full-time and has no bandwidth left for anything else. You're leaving, Naruto said. Not accusatory. He'd been expecting this since the hospital room conversation, and his new eyes had been reading it in Sasuke's posture all afternoon, in the way he moved through the hospital corridors like someone checking the route. Sasuke didn't deny it. Not yet. But soon. A pause. I don't know. Naruto looked at him. Sasuke was looking at the river, jaw set, the expression that meant the actual thought was 3 layers below the surface and he was deciding whether any of those layers were coming up. I watched you, Sasuke said. From the hospital window, this morning. The training ground. He paused. I couldn't see the detail from that distance. But I felt the shock waves. He picked up a flat stone and turned it in his fingers. The entire east wing of the hospital felt them. Sorry. Stop apologizing for it. He threw the stone. It skipped 4 times and then sank. What does it feel like? When you're using it? Naruto thought about the honest answer. Like everything I've ever done before was, not wrong, but smaller. Like I was using a fraction of something and just didn't know the rest was there. He watched the ripples from Sasuke's stone reach the far bank. It doesn't feel foreign. That's the thing I can't explain to people who ask. It feels like mine. Sasuke was quiet. He picked up another stone. Yours is the Sharingan, Naruto said. Yes. And the curse mark. The curse mark isn't mine, Sasuke said, sharp and immediate, the first sharp thing of the conversation. The Sharingan is mine because I was born with the potential for it. The curse mark it's a key that someone else cut to fit a lock in me. That's not the same thing. No, Naruto agreed. It's not. He looked at Sasuke sidelong. That's why going to Orochimaru is the wrong move. He'd give you power, but it'd be his key, his lock. None of it would be yours. Sasuke threw the second stone. It skipped twice and sank. You're going to keep saying that. Every time it's relevant. Which is whenever you decide it's relevant. Which is often. Naruto pulled his feet out of the water and crossed his legs on the rock. Sasuke. I'm going to ask you something and I need you to actually answer it, not give me the version you give everyone else. Sasuke looked at him. The Sharingan activated, both eyes, red and spinning, the reflex of someone who expects something they need to track carefully. It was almost funny, the instinct. What was Naruto going to do, lie to him? What do you actually want? Naruto said. Sasuke stared at him. Not what you've told yourself you want. Not the mission. Not Itachi. What do you, Sasuke, actually want when you think about what your life is supposed to look like at the end of all this? The Sharingan spun. Sasuke's jaw shifted. The heron upstream took flight for no apparent reason and went away over the tree-line. I don't know, Sasuke said quietly. Yes you do. He stopped. Something moved through his face that was too unguarded for him to manage before Naruto's new eyes caught it, something raw and young and tired, the thing underneath all the architecture of vengeance and ambition. I want it to have meant something. Everything they did. My family. My clan. The night of the massacre. His voice didn't break but it was very careful. I want it to have, if I can kill Itachi, if I restore the Uchiha name, if I make the strength of the Sharingan mean something again, then it didn't all disappear for nothing. Then they weren't just erased. He looked at the river. That's what I want. Naruto was quiet for a long moment. Then you don't need Orochimaru, he said. You need to survive long enough to be strong enough. And you can do that here. He met Sasuke's eyes, Sharingan against gold, the two most unusual pairs of eyes in the village looking directly at each other. Train with me. Sasuke blinked. I'm serious. Train with me. Jiraiya's already running sessions that are, the scale is different now. You push against that, you'll grow faster than anything Orochimaru could offer you, and none of it will be his. Naruto's voice was direct, no performance in it. And when the time comes for Itachi, I'll be there. You won't have to do it alone. You're not, Sasuke stopped. Started again. You're not an Uchiha. It's not your fight. You're my teammate. Naruto's tone was absolute in the way a wall is absolute, not aggressive, just structural. That makes it my fight. Unless you'd rather I wasn't. Sasuke looked at him for a very long time. The river moved. The light dropped another degree toward evening. Somewhere in the village, someone was cooking, and the smell came over the water, and it was so ordinary against everything else that it was almost funny. You're annoying, Sasuke said. Constantly, Naruto agreed. Another silence. Then Sasuke deactivated the Sharingan, and the normal black of his eyes came back, and he looked at the river with an expression that wasn't resolved but was maybe, for the first time in a while, considering a resolution that wasn't written in blood and solitude. Tomorrow, he said. What about it? Training. Tomorrow. He stood up from the rock, brushed river damp from his shorts. Don't be late. Naruto grinned, and it was the real one, unguarded, entirely himself. I'm never late. You're always late. I arrive at the time that is correct for me. Sasuke's expression did the thing again, the structural component before a smile, 1 second, gone. He walked back toward the village without looking back, and his footsteps on the riverbank were steady and careful and pointed at Konoha. Naruto watched him go, then turned back to the river. The gold eyes reflected the evening sky, which had gone the deep blue that comes between sunset and dark, the color that belongs to neither day nor night and exists only in the space between. His tail moved slowly, touching the surface of the water and drawing a line that the current smoothed away immediately, as if the river wanted to keep no record of it. He sat there until the stars came out. The message arrived in Tsunade's office at midnight, via a courier hawk that bypassed standard channels and arrived through a window that definitely should not have been reachable, which told her something about who had sent it before she opened it. Jiraiya's handwriting. Brief. 2 lines. Kabuto was spotted in the border territories this afternoon. He wasn't alone. Whatever Orochimaru is building out there, it's pointed at Naruto, not Sasuke. They're moving faster than I expected. Tsunade set the note down on her desk and looked at the village through her office window. The lights of it, spread across the dark like something settled and alive, and she pressed her thumb to the seal on the back of her hand and thought about 13-year-old boys and ancient powers and the specific kind of trouble that was shaped like opportunity from the outside and something else entirely from the inside. Then she pulled out a mission scroll and began to write. Chapter 4, The Sound's Gambit. The mission brief was thin, which was the first thing Naruto noticed. Not thin as in incomplete. Tsunade's mission briefs were never incomplete. She ran paperwork like she ran everything, with the comprehensive precision of someone who had seen what happened when the details got skipped. Thin as in deliberate. The kind of thin that meant the person writing it knew more than it said and had reasons for not saying it. A merchant convoy moving through the border territories between the land of fire and the land of rice fields had gone dark 3 days ago. 17 people. The convoy carried medical supplies bound for a clinic network in the outer villages, nothing politically sensitive, nothing that should have attracted attention. 2 Jonin escorts had gone with it. Neither had reported in. It reads like a C rank, Naruto said, sitting across from Tsunade's desk with the scroll open in his hands. It is a C rank, Tsunade said. She was looking at him with the expression she wore when she was saying one thing and meaning another thing and waiting to see how long it took him to find the second thing. Medical supplies don't go dark. Jonin escorts don't stop reporting unless something very specific happened to them. He set the scroll down. This is a trap. Probably. Orochimaru. Almost certainly. Naruto looked at her. And you're sending me anyway. I'm giving you the option. She leaned back in her chair. You can decline. I'll send a different team. We'll investigate through normal channels, probably find nothing, lose the trail, and Orochimaru gets to keep running whatever he's building out there on our border. She folded her hands on the desk. Or you go. You spring the trap. And we find out what he's actually built. You want me to walk into it. I want you to walk into it knowing it's a trap, with your eyes open, and see what's on the other side. Her voice was steady. This isn't me sending you into danger without knowing. This is me trusting that whatever you walked through in that forest 2 weeks ago, whatever Kimimaro walked away from, is real, and durable, and doesn't need me wrapping it in protective padding. She met his eyes. Am I wrong? Naruto thought about it for approximately 2 seconds. No. Then the question is team composition. Sasuke, Naruto said immediately. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. He was discharged from medical restriction 4 days ago. His curse mark is stable but, he trains with me every morning. He's ready. Naruto said it without argument because it wasn't an argument, it was a fact. The past week of shared training sessions had done things to Sasuke's development that would have taken months through conventional means, not because Naruto was teaching him anything specifically, but because training against something operating at that scale forced rapid adaptation in a way that comfort never did. Sasuke had been furious for the first 3 days. Furious, and focused, and growing. And he needs to be there. Reasons beyond personal preference. His eyes. The Sharingan sees through transformation jutsu, genjutsu layering, substitution techniques. Whatever Orochimaru has set up out there will have layers. He paused. And Sasuke knows how Orochimaru thinks. He spent time in that orbit. He knows the logic. Tsunade considered. Who else? Shikamaru. No hesitation. If it's a constructed trap, it has a design. He'll find the architecture faster than anyone. He thought for a second. That's enough. 3. Larger team increases the signal. Orochimaru will be watching the border. Tsunade looked at him for a long moment. You've been thinking about this. Jiraiya told me something's coming from that direction. I've been thinking about it since. Of course you have. She opened her desk drawer, produced a second scroll, and slid it across to him. Mission parameters. This one has everything I left out of the first brief. The Jonin who stopped reporting, their last communication mentioned a village called Tanagusa, 2 miles inside the border. Population around 400. It's been quiet for longer than a border village should be. Her eyes were level. Don't assume the civilians are safe. Naruto picked up both scrolls. When do we leave? Dawn, she said. And Naruto. She waited until he looked at her. Don't be clever out there. Don't manage yourself. If Orochimaru has built something genuinely dangerous, I need you to be the thing you are, not the thing you think is polite to be. He stood, tucked the scrolls away. When have I ever been polite? In the council chamber, she said. Which was the correct call there? This is a different situation. Her voice carried something underneath the directness, not sentiment exactly, but the structural material from which sentiment is built. Come back. Always do, he said, and left. Shikamaru received the mission brief at his house, sitting on his porch in the dark with a shogi board. No one was playing against him because his father had gone to bed. He read it twice by lamplight, then set it down, then picked it up and read the second scroll. He sat for a while looking at the shogi board. Then he went inside and packed without waking his parents. He met Naruto and Sasuke at the eastern gate at the hour before dawn when the sky was the gray of old ash and the air had the cold clarity of things not yet decided. Sasuke arrived exactly on time, which was his way of saying he'd been there early and had waited long enough to time his visible arrival correctly. Naruto arrived 30 seconds ahead of Shikamaru, which was the closest to punctual he'd managed all week. Shikamaru looked at Naruto, the fur, the tail, the gold eyes and the pre-dawn dark, and then at Sasuke, whose Sharingan was already active at low intensity, the red of faint ember in the gray light. Trap, Shikamaru said. Yes, Naruto confirmed. Orochimaru. Yes. You want to spring it? Yes. Shikamaru picked up his pack. Troublesome. He said it without any real weight, the word had become so habitual it functioned as punctuation. Let's go then. They went through the gate as the last stars were making their decision about whether to stay, and the forest swallowed them the way it always did, the specific silence of trees that have been standing long enough to have opinions about the things that pass beneath them. The border territories were different from the forests around Konoha. Older, somehow, the way places feel old when they've seen the edges of too many conflicts without ever being the center of any of them. The trees were larger, the undergrowth denser, the path that threaded through toward the land of rice fields narrow enough that they were moving in single file, Naruto in front because his nose was providing a running landscape of information that the other two couldn't access. There's smoke ahead, he said. Cold smoke. Fire from at least 2 days ago. He kept moving. And something else. Chemical. Sharp. He tracked it another second. Like a Kabuto blend. He uses a specific preservative in his medical compounds, Sasuke said from behind him. Modified formaldehyde derivative. If you can smell it, he's been here recently. Or his people have. Shikamaru, at the back, how many people? Hard to say. The wind's been moving. Naruto slowed. At least 6 separate scent profiles that aren't civilian. Probably more. They're not all fresh, staggered timing. Like shifts. Shikamaru absorbed this. Rotating watch points. He set this up days ago. This wasn't reactive, he planned the timeline before we knew the mission existed. He paused. Which means either he has an information source inside Konoha, or he created the conditions that made this mission inevitable and waited for us to take the bait. A longer pause. The convoy. He took the convoy to create the mission. 17 civilians, Naruto said. Are probably alive, Shikamaru said. If he needed them to create the mission, he needs them to still be findable. Dead convoy is a different kind of signal. This was designed to look like an investigation, not a recovery. He said it quickly, clinically, in the way he handled things that had moral weight by converting them temporarily to tactical weight and handling them there. Their leverage. He expected Konoha to send someone. He expected it to be a small team, low profile. He expected Naruto, Sasuke said. He expected the new variable to make Tsunade think tactically about how to use it. Shikamaru's voice was admirably flat. He's not wrong. She did exactly that. The question is whether he planned for Naruto specifically, or for the power level, because those are different problems to manage. Both, Naruto said. He wants me. The power is secondary. He stopped walking. The other two stopped behind him. The forest had gone quiet. Not gradually, immediately, the way forest quiet happens when something in the food chain that matters has moved into the neighborhood. Naruto's nose was full of information, the cold smoke, the Kabuto compound, 6+ non-civilian scents, and underneath all of it something that had been masked but not masked well enough, the specific smell of active genjutsu working on the air. A scent layer technique, designed to replace ambient forest smell with neutral nothing, the kind of thing a skilled sensor would deploy to create a dead zone. It created a dead zone in a forest that was never quiet. Genjutsu perimeter, Naruto said. 20 feet ahead. It's doing something to ambient sound and smell, meant to make this area feel normal. It doesn't. He looked at Sasuke. Sasuke's Sharingan spun. I see it. 3 layers. Outer layer handles visual, makes the path look clear. Second layer is the scent suppression you're picking up. Third layer is, he paused. It's not concealment. It's directional. It's designed to make anyone who enters feel like the right path is straight ahead. He tracked the edges. It's a funnel. The trap is at the end of the funnel. Which direction is the funnel pointing? Shikamaru asked. The village, Sasuke said. Tanagusa. All 3 of them looked at the path ahead. He's in the village, Naruto said. His people are in the village, Shikamaru said. Kabuto for certain. Probably a full extraction team, I'm guessing somewhere between 8 and 15 operatives, mixed composition, some modified through Orochimaru's techniques. He was running it fast, the mental architecture of the situation assembling itself in the way he worked. The civilians are insurance. He anticipated that whoever came would hesitate at the village perimeter because of civilian exposure. That hesitation is a window, it's when the extraction happens. Ideally he separates the most valuable target from the team during the confusion of the entry. Separates me, Naruto said. Creates a scenario where you move forward and the team is engaged elsewhere. Or he creates a distress signal, one of the civilians, an emergency inside the village that triggers your instinct to respond without waiting for the team to coordinate. Shikamaru looked at Naruto. And he's probably right that that would work. Historically. Naruto looked at him. Historically, Shikamaru repeated, carefully. A silence. Naruto looked at the path ahead, at the genjutsu funnel that Sasuke's eyes could see and that his nose could smell wrong. He thought about 17 civilians. He thought about Tsunade's voice saying don't manage yourself. He thought about the specific difference between walking into a trap alone because you didn't see it and walking into it alone because you did see it and had decided something. I'm going in the front, he said. Straight through the funnel, exactly the way he expects. Shikamaru's expression shifted. And us? Not through the funnel. He turned. Sasuke, can you find where the genjutsu perimeter ends? On the sides, the edges of the funnel? Sasuke scanned. There. 40 feet right, the outer layer breaks. There's a gap. He tracked. And 30 feet left, the same. Go through the gaps. Come at the village from the flanks, not the approach. Don't engage anything until I've gone in. He looked at both of them. Orochimaru built this to separate me from the team in the chaos of entry. I'm going to make the chaos of entry very large, very early, and I'm going to do it deliberately, and while everyone in that village is focused on that, you two find the civilians and you get them out. Shikamaru studied him. And Kabuto? Don't touch Kabuto, Naruto said. He's mine. Because? Because I want to send Orochimaru a message, and Kabuto is the only reliable postal service. Shikamaru looked at him for another second. Then, this is a genuinely good plan. Don't sound surprised. I'm not surprised. I'm recalibrating prior data. He picked up his pack. When we hear you go in, we move. You'll hear me go in, Naruto said. I assume so. He glanced at the training ground situation 2 weeks ago and didn't need to finish the sentence. Sasuke moved right without further discussion, vanishing into the undergrowth toward the genjutsu gap with the silent efficiency of someone who had been doing this since before he could properly read. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. Shikamaru went left, careful and low, already mapping the geometry in his head. Naruto stood alone on the path and looked at the funnel ahead. He took a breath. Tasted the genjutsu in the air, the artificial nothing of suppressed ambient life. Felt his tail settle behind him, the specific quality of stillness that it took on when he was about to move. He walked forward. No sprint, no technique, no chakra flare to announce him early. Just a walk, steady and direct, because there was no point in being cagey about an entrance into a situation you had already decided to own. The genjutsu closed around him as he entered the perimeter, the false normal of it settling like a fog, and he felt it trying to smooth his perception into the prescribed pattern. The path is clear, nothing is wrong, proceed to the village, and he observed it doing that with calm, analytical interest, and he kept walking. The village appeared through the trees with the specific quality of places that have been altered, present, structurally intact, but wrong in the way a house is wrong when you walk in and someone has moved every piece of furniture 2 inches to the left. The buildings were standing. The square was empty. There were lights in windows, real lights, not performance, which meant people were inside, but the square itself had the held-breath quality of a stage between acts. 12 operatives. He counted them before he entered the square, nose and ears and those gold eyes all working together in the easy synthesis that 2 weeks of training had made automatic. 12 non-civilian bodies distributed through the buildings around the square in a pattern that was designed to close inward once a target entered the center. Kabuto was in the building directly across the square. He could smell the medical compound on him specifically. Could smell the ink of the jutsu notes he'd been making. And one more thing, the 17 missing civilians were in the large structure to the left, the village hall, probably, and they were alive, which let something loosen in his chest that he hadn't fully realized was clenched. Naruto walked into the square. He walked to the center of it and stopped and stood there, and he looked around at the buildings that contained the 12 operatives and the building that contained Kabuto, and he was fully visible, fully present, not hiding or concealing or being cautious, and the quality of his stillness in the center of the ambush had a specific effect on the operatives observing him that was hard to articulate and easy to feel. Nothing happened for 3 seconds. Then Kabuto stepped out of the building across the square. He looked exactly as he always did, careful, precise, the silver hair and the wire-rimmed glasses and the medic-kneeing hands that were simultaneously the most gentle and most dangerous things about him. He walked into the square at a measured pace and stopped at a comfortable distance and looked at Naruto with an expression of professional assessment that was doing a reasonable job of covering a more complicated internal weather. You came alone, Kabuto said. I came first, Naruto said. Different thing. A small pause. You know it's a trap. I walked through the genjutsu funnel. It smells like your compounds from 50 feet out. Naruto tilted his head slightly. You've gotten better at scent suppression since last time, but you're masking the wrong layer. The carrier agent is still present underneath. Something shifted in Kabuto's expression. How did you, new nose, Naruto said simply. Kabuto looked at him, at the full picture of him, the fur and the eyes and the tail and the grounded, unhurried posture in the center of the ambush site, and did what Kabuto always did when information conflicted with prior modeling. He updated, fast and honest with himself in the way that made him genuinely dangerous to work against. Whatever he had been expecting, the gap between that expectation and what was standing in front of him was large enough to require immediate revision. Orochimaru-sama wants you, Kabuto said. Not as a threat, as information, the way he deployed most things. I know. The offer is, there's no offer I'm interested in. Naruto's voice was even. I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to get the 17 civilians out of the building on my left, make sure you understand what that took, and send you back to Orochimaru with a message. Kabuto's eyes moved to the village hall. Calculated. Came back. You can smell them. Yes. The operatives, 12. I know where they all are. He looked at Kabuto steadily. Here's what's going to happen. My team is flanking the village right now. In about 2 minutes, they're going to reach the civilians and start the extraction. In that same 2 minutes, your 12 operatives are going to decide what to do about me in the center of their formation. He paused. I'm going to suggest they don't decide to engage. That will go worse for them than any alternative. You're one person. I was one person when I walked through Kimimaro's dance of the Clematis, Naruto said. Your boss knows that. That's why you're here with 12 people instead of 2. That's already an answer to your statement. Kabuto's jaw was very controlled. His hands, medic-mean hands, always in motion at low level when he was thinking, subtle enough that most people never caught it, had gone very still. 12 trained operatives, several of whom have been through Orochimaru-sama's enhancement process. The first one came from the right building's roof. Fast, trained, enhanced, moving at the speed of someone who had been past the edge of normal human performance and pushed through by Orochimaru's particular brand of modification. A blur from the roofline, silent, a blade extended in the standard configuration for a killing strike at a standing target. Naruto moved one hand. The operative stopped. Not hit, not countered in the traditional sense, stopped, Naruto's hand having intercepted the strike at the wrist with a grip that arrested all momentum completely, the operative hanging in the motion of the attack like a photograph of a photograph, and those gold eyes turned toward them with the patience of something that had infinite time and was choosing to spend some of it here. He set them down. Carefully. On their feet. And let go. The operative stepped back. 2 steps. Then a third. Their eyes were very wide. Okay, Kabuto said quietly. Tell the others, Naruto said. Kabuto turned his head slightly and made a small gesture. Around the square, in the upper windows and on the rooflines where he could see them, the other operatives went still. Not retreating, just still, the way people go still when the risk calculation has been sharply revised. Naruto looked back at Kabuto. Where's Orochimaru? Not here. I know he's not here. He doesn't do fieldwork for extractions. Naruto's tone was the same, patient, level, not unkind. Where is his current base? You know I won't answer that. I know you won't. I asked anyway. He stepped forward, and Kabuto, to his credit, or perhaps his survival instinct's credit, held his ground, though his hands came up fractionally. This is the message. Are you ready? Kabuto looked at him. Go ahead. Tell him that I know what he wants. Tell him that I understand the interest. And tell him, Naruto held Kabuto's eyes with those gold ones, close enough now that the scent of the medical compounds was very clear and the quality of Naruto's presence at this distance was something Kabuto would later struggle to describe accurately in his report, that if he comes for me, I will go to him first. I won't wait. I won't hide. I will walk through whatever he builds and I will find him personally, and then we'll have the conversation he wants to have. A pause. Make sure he understands that I mean that as a genuine offer, not a threat. I'm curious about him too. I just need him to understand the terms before we meet. Kabuto stared at him. He'll understand, Naruto said. Then from across the village, from the direction of the village hall, Shikamaru's voice, controlled and clear, carrying the specific cadence that meant task accomplished, Naruto. We have them. Naruto stepped back from Kabuto. We're done here, he said. Take your people and go. Kabuto looked at him for a long moment. Behind the glasses, behind the professional calibration, something moved, not fear exactly, and not admiration exactly, but the thing that lives between them, the thing you feel when you're looking at something that has permanently rewritten one of your working assumptions about the world. You're not what I modeled you as, Kabuto said. No, Naruto agreed. Not anymore. Kabuto turned and walked back toward the building he'd come from. One by one, the roofline figures disappeared. The square went quiet in a different way than before, not the held-breath ambush quiet but the aftermath quiet, the kind that comes after a storm has passed not by breaking but by simply deciding to move on. Naruto stood in the center of it for a moment, then turned and walked toward the village hall. The 17 civilians were in various states of frightened and tired, seated on the floor of the hall between the support pillars with Sasuke standing at the door and Shikamaru crouched at the center of the room talking to a middle-aged woman who appeared to be the convoy's head of operations. She was composed in the specific way of someone who has decided composure is the only option and is executing it with commitment. When Naruto came through the door, the room reacted to him, the fur, the tail, the gold eyes, in the predictable way rooms reacted to him in public since the transformation, which involved several seconds of collective recalibration and then a rapid decision about how to categorize what they were seeing. A small child in the corner stared at his tail with the uncomplicated fascination of someone who hadn't been told yet what to be afraid of. Naruto looked at the child and let the tail do a slow deliberate sweep, and the child laughed, which was the best thing that had happened all morning. They gone. Sasuke said from the door. Moving out. They'll be across the border in 30 minutes. Naruto looked at Shikamaru. Everyone in one piece. Minor injuries. Some dehydration. Nothing medical. Shikamaru stood. The 2 Jonin escorts are here as well, they were incapacitated early and held separately. Both functional. He looked at Naruto. Kabuto. Going home with a message. You told him where you were going to find Orochimaru. I told him I'd go find Orochimaru myself rather than wait. Naruto sat down against the wall, which put him at eye level with the child who was still watching his tail. The tail moved again. Another laugh. I meant it. Shikamaru looked at him carefully. You understand that I'll come find you to Orochimaru isn't a threat he'll take seriously as a deterrent. It's an invitation he'll optimize for. I know. Naruto met his eyes. That's fine. Shikamaru processed that. Filed it. Okay. The convoy, Naruto said. He looked at the convoy leader, who had been listening to all of this with the expression of someone who had fully committed to processing the situation and was making good progress. The medical supplies. What happened to them? She blinked. The wagons are outside the village, where the operatives left them. Intact, as far as I know. They weren't interested in the supplies. You were headed to a clinic network. Yes. Outer villages, south of here. Several of them have been waiting on these supplies we'll escort you the rest of the way, Naruto said. Sasuke turned from the door. That's not in the mission brief. No, Naruto agreed. But the mission brief was a thin one. He looked at Sasuke. We have time. Sasuke looked at him. The Sharingan was still active, still seeing more than anyone else in the room, and whatever it was reading in Naruto's face when he looked at the convoy leader and the child and the circle of tired civilians, whatever that data set added up to when Sasuke ran it through the analytical machinery behind those red eyes, it produced something that landed in his expression and settled there. Fine, Sasuke said. Shikamaru made a sound. I'm writing mission scope expansion, humanitarian grounds in the report, and Tsunade can have opinions about it if she wants. She won't, Naruto said. No, Shikamaru agreed. She won't. The 3 clinic villages were half a day's travel south, and they reached the first one by afternoon, the second by early evening, and the third, the smallest, furthest, on a hillside that overlooked a river valley. As the sun was going the colors it went just before it stopped. The third village's medic was a woman in her 50s named Hannah, who received the supplies at the door of her clinic with the specific exhausted relief of someone who had been managing shortage for too long, and she looked at the 3 shinobi who had delivered them and said, practically, "You'll stay the night. The road back is no good in the dark." "We're fine," Sasuke said. "You'll stay the night," she repeated, without any adjustment in tone, in the way of someone who has raised things and knows how the conversation goes. They stayed the night. The clinic had 2 spare rooms, and the village had a kitchen that the neighbors had apparently been running cooperatively during the supply shortage, and dinner was rice and preserved vegetables and something with fish that was very good, and that Naruto had 3 servings of, while Hannah watched with the expression of someone recalibrating upward on portion estimates. After dinner, sitting on the clinic's front step in the dark with the valley below them and the stars above in their full undiminished quantity, the 3 of them were quiet in the easy way of people who have shared a long day and reached the end of it intact. Shikamaru was looking at the stars with the expression he wore when he was doing the kind of thinking that wasn't about tactics or planning but about the bigger, slower things, the things that took years to understand and couldn't be helped along by intelligence alone. He did it rarely and in private, and he'd apparently decided this qualified. "What do you think Orochimaru does next?" he said. "Rebuilds," Naruto said. "He's patient. He'll recalculate, redesign." He picked up a small stone and turned it in his fingers. "But his timeline compressed when I happened. Whatever he was going to do in 3 years, he's going to try to do faster. Because he's running out of time himself," Sasuke said quietly. Both of them looked at him. "His body deteriorates. The jutsu he uses to jump between hosts, it's not a perfect system. He needs a strong body before the current one fails completely." He was looking at the valley, not at them. "He saw what you are and he stopped thinking about me entirely. I'm a known quantity. Sharingan, curse mark potential, Uchiha genetics. All of it catalogued and understood." He paused. "You're a variable he doesn't have data on. That's more valuable to him than anything he already knows the value of. Doesn't bother you?" Naruto asked. Not baiting, genuinely asking. Sasuke thought about it. 6 months ago it would have. He said it with the specific honesty of someone who has recently revised something fundamental and is still examining the revision. "I spent a long time measuring everything against being chosen. Being the strongest, the most worth pursuing, the most," he stopped. Restarted. "It was a small way to think." Naruto said nothing. This was a moment that had its own weight and didn't need his input. "What you said at the river," Sasuke said. "About training. About being there for Itachi." He still wasn't looking at Naruto directly. "I haven't decided." "I know. But I haven't left either." "I know that too," Naruto said. Sasuke finally looked at him, sideways, the gold eyes catching the starlight and doing something with it that made the color impossible to entirely name. "The thing you said to Kabuto. That you'd go find Orochimaru yourself." "Yes." "You meant that?" "Yes." A silence. "You're not afraid of him?" "No." Naruto said it simply, without performance. "I respect what he knows. I think he's genuinely brilliant in a way that's genuinely terrible." "But afraid?" He shook his head. "No." Sasuke looked at him for a long moment. "I was afraid of him," he said. "Not past tense, not entirely. Something present in it. Even when I was choosing to go to him. I was afraid of what he wanted and I thought the fear meant something about how necessary he was. He looked back at the valley. It didn't. It just meant I was afraid. Shikamaru, from the other side, was very carefully not doing anything to disturb whatever was happening in this conversation. "You're not going," Naruto said. Not a question. Not even a statement, more like a recognition of something that had already settled without announcement. Sasuke was quiet for a long time. "No," he said finally. Not to him. The valley below them breathed with nighttime air. Somewhere down the hill, the village was settling into sleep. The stars did what stars do, which is simply be present and extraordinarily old, which had always struck Naruto as a kind of comfort even when he'd been too young to articulate why. He set the stone down on the step beside him and leaned back on his palms and looked up. His tail moved, slow and thinking, and the nighttime air moved with it, and neither Sasuke nor Shikamaru said anything about it, which was its own kind of acceptance, the kind that doesn't need to be declared, that lives in the gap between the absence of a problem and the presence of something better. They sat there for a while more, the three of them, while the valley dreamed below and the world kept moving in its directions, Orochimaru in his underground rooms writing faster, Pain in his cave sitting with the weight of a reassessment, Jiraiya somewhere on a road reading messages and making calculations, all of it in motion, all of it converging towards something that hadn't happened yet. But not tonight. Tonight the stars were out and dinner had been good and the clinic would open tomorrow morning with its supplies on the shelves, and that was, in its own small complete way, exactly enough. Chapter 5, The Promise That Still Stands. 3 weeks after Tanagusa, Sasuke left at dawn. Not running, that was the thing Naruto noticed first, sitting up from sleep with every instinct suddenly awake and oriented northeast, toward the valley of the end. Not body flicker, not the panicked departure of someone who'd made a decision in the dark and was outrunning their doubt. Sasuke had packed. He'd left the hospital issue blanket folded on the bed. He'd taken his headband, which meant something specific. People who were done with Konoha left their headbands, and Sasuke had taken his, which meant he hadn't decided he was done, just that he was going anyway. Naruto was out the window before the thought fully finished forming. He moved at the speed that was his now, the ground covering itself beneath him with the efficiency of something that hadn't negotiated with distance in weeks, and he felt the direction Sasuke had gone the way you feel a sound you recognize before you consciously name it, something in the secondary network orienting him without being asked, and the forest opened up around him and closed behind him and the pre-dawn light was the color of iron. He caught up at the river. Not the small one behind the eastern training grounds where they'd sat together 3 weeks ago with the heron and the flat stones. This river was different, wider, moving faster, the one that ran northeast through the forest toward the valley of the end, and Sasuke was standing at its bank with his pack on his back and his headband on and his expression carrying the specific quality of someone who had run the full calculation and arrived at a conclusion they found genuinely sad. He heard Naruto coming. Turned. Didn't run. "I knew you'd catch up," Sasuke said. "Then why leave at dawn?" "Because I needed the walk." He looked at Naruto, the gold eyes in the pale early light, the dark fur, the tail still now at Naruto's side. "And because I didn't want to have this conversation in the village." Naruto stopped at the bank, close enough to talk, far enough to let Sasuke stand where he was. "You're going to the valley?" "Yes." "To do what?" Not angry. Genuinely asking. Sasuke's jaw shifted. "To figure out if I can leave." He said it with a precision that cut past the obvious reading of it. "I've been here 3 weeks. I've trained with you every morning. I've watched what you are and what you're becoming. I've had dinner with Shikamaru's family twice and Lee made me visit him in the hospital 4 times and each time he cried a little and pretended he didn't." Something moved through his expression. "And I still feel it. The pull. Itachi. The clan. Everything that's unfinished." He looked at the river. "I need to know if that's something I can be here and still carry, or if it's going to pull me away eventually no matter what I decide now. And going to the valley answers that how?" "It's where I was going," Sasuke said. When you stopped me the first time. It's where the decision was made, or almost made. I want to stand there and see if it still feels like the only option. He met Naruto's eyes. If it does, then I was never actually staying. I was just delaying. And you should know that. Naruto looked at him for a long moment. The river moved between them and past them, going somewhere with the committed velocity of water that knows its route. Okay, Naruto said. Sasuke blinked. Okay. I'm coming with you. A pause. That's not, you're going to the valley to stand somewhere and think about something, Naruto said. I can do that too. He stepped to the bank. Unless you need to be alone. Sasuke looked at him. Then at the river. Then, after a moment that had several layers of something working through it, come on then. They walked northeast together through the waking forest while the sky went from iron to gray to the first pale suggestion of blue, and neither of them talked, and the silence was the easy kind that had been built over 3 weeks of mornings and training grounds and a dinner in a small village with a valley below it and stars above. The valley of the end announced itself the way natural landmarks do when they've earned their name, not dramatically but with a kind of quiet insistence, the sound of the waterfall reaching them first, the specific bass register of a lot of water falling a long way, and then the path opened and the valley was there. The statues. Hashirama and Madara, carved in the cliff faces on either side of the river where it dropped over the fall, enormous and permanent, their stone faces looking at each other across the water with an expression that had outlasted both the people it depicted and most of the conflicts they'd started. The water between the statues caught the morning light and broke it into pieces and distributed it broadly. Naruto had been here before in some version of this, the first time, when the Sasuke retrieval had nearly ended differently, before the forest outside Konoha had reorganized his understanding of himself. He remembered the specific quality of that fight, the desperation of it, the feeling of reaching for something and not quite touching it, the red chakra and the grief and the rage all tangled together in a way that hadn't resolved cleanly. He stood at the edge of the fall now and felt none of that. Just the morning and the water and Sasuke standing 10 feet away looking at the statues with an expression he wasn't managing. Last time I was here, Sasuke said, I had made the decision. Everything had a shape. I knew what I was doing and why and it felt, not good. But clear. He paused. Like surgery. Clean incision. He was quiet for a moment. I hated you for getting in the way of it. I know, Naruto said. And now I'm back here and the decision doesn't have a shape anymore. He turned from the statues. I wanted clarity and I got, you. And Lee crying 4 times. And Shikamaru explaining the geopolitical implications of Sound's border positioning over rice at his mother's table. Something at the corner of his mouth. Which was genuinely useful information, by the way. He can't turn it off, Naruto said. The analysis. It just comes out. I know. Sasuke looked at the water. The pull is still there. Itachi. I need you to understand that I haven't resolved that. I don't know if I can resolve it by choosing Konoha. It might just be something I carry. You carry it here or you carry it alone, Naruto said. Carrying it alone doesn't make it lighter. It just makes the walk longer. Sasuke looked at him. When did you get philosophical? I've always been philosophical. No one listened. You used to express philosophy primarily through screaming. That's a valid delivery method. Sasuke's mouth did the thing. 1 second, gone. He looked back at the statues, Hashirama and Madara, the original version of whatever this was between them, the template from which the current variation had descended through generations of iteration. Do you think they felt it too? The pull in 2 directions? Naruto looked at the statues. Hashirama spent half his life trying to keep Madara in the village. Trying to make a version of the world where Madara's reasons for leaving didn't feel as real as they did. He thought about it. I don't know if he ever felt like he succeeded. But he kept trying. It didn't work out, Sasuke said. Not for them. Naruto met his eyes. But they set it up so it could work out eventually. The village exists. The system they built exists. He paused. Maybe that's what doing it right looks like. Not fixing everything. Just building something that makes it possible for the next version to do better. Sasuke was very still. I'm not Hashirama, Naruto said. And you're not Madara. Those are just two guys carved in a rock. He gestured at the statues. We don't have to follow their script. A silence that had the quality of something settling. Not resolution, Sasuke wasn't built for clean resolutions, his nature moved in long arcs that touched back with what they'd passed and incorporated it slowly, but something adjacent to it. Something that was the first structural layer of it, the foundation before the building. I'm not going, Sasuke said. I know. I might need to, eventually. To face Itachi. When you are, I'll go with you. Naruto's voice was absolutely level. I already said that. You said it at the river. I thought it might have been, I meant it at the river. I mean it now. I'll mean it in 2 years when the time is right. He looked at Sasuke directly. You're not doing that alone. That's not negotiable. Sasuke stared at him. The Sharingan spun up without his seeming to intend it, the reflex of emotional overwhelm, the eyes activating when feeling was too much information to process through ordinary vision. He let it run for a second and then, deliberately, let it go. Black eyes, looking at gold. You're very annoying, he said. You keep saying that. It keeps being true. Sure, Naruto said. Let's go home. They were 2 miles from the village when the forest changed. Not dramatically, not the way the ambush outside Tanagusa had changed, with genjutsu layers and suppressed scent. This was different. Quieter. A single presence in the trees, moving parallel to their path, keeping pace without closing, and the presence had a quality that Naruto's changed senses translated immediately and without ambiguity. He put one hand out. Sasuke stopped. Sharingan up. One person, Naruto said quietly. Parallel. Moving with us, not toward us. He tracked the direction, the scent information, the faint sound data. Powerful. But not, he paused. Not aggressive. They're just watching. Sasuke tracked with his eyes. Anbu wouldn't bother with the parallel approach. Someone else. He scanned. The signature is, he stopped. Itachi. The name landed in the forest morning like a dropped stone. Neither of them moved for a second. He's not attacking, Naruto said. No. Sasuke's voice had gone the careful neutral of someone managing multiple simultaneous internal responses. He's been parallel for, how long? Since the valley, Naruto said. Maybe before. Another silence. The presence in the trees kept moving at their pace, neither faster nor slower, maintaining exactly the current distance, which was the behavior of someone who had made a decision about that distance and was committing to it. Sasuke's hands had not gone to his weapons. Naruto noticed that and said nothing about it. Itachi, Sasuke said, not loudly. The name carried in the morning quiet. Say what you came to say. The parallel movement stopped. For a moment nothing happened. The forest breathed. The leaves in the early morning made the small sound they made when there was no wind and they were just being leaves, alive and unhurried. Then Itachi stepped out of the trees. He looked like Sasuke in the way that family resemblance works at distance, the same bone structure, the same deliberate quality of movement, and unlike that resemblance at close range, because Itachi looked like the long version of Sasuke, the version that had been carrying something very heavy for a very long time and had arranged itself around the weight. He was in a dark travel coat, not Akatsuki robes, which was a choice that communicated something. The Manjikyu was not active. His hands were at his sides. He looked at Sasuke first. Sasuke was looking back at him with the specific quality of someone whose emotional structure is under enormous pressure and is not going to show that to anyone, least of all the person responsible for the pressure, and managing that with the precision of someone who has had years of practice. Then Itachi looked at Naruto. The thing that happened in his expression when he looked at Naruto was very small and very contained, the way Itachi contained everything, but it was there, the response to what he was seeing, to the fur and the eyes and the tail and the presence of it, and the response wasn't fear or calculation. It was something that might have been, in someone less composed, wonder. "Uzumaki Naruto," he said. His voice was quiet, the kind of quiet that came from genuine stillness rather than suppressed volume. "Uchiha Itachi," Naruto said. "You're not what the reports described." "Reports are usually behind," Naruto said. A small acknowledgement of this. Itachi looked back at Sasuke. "You didn't go," he said. "No," Sasuke said. "I know. I've been watching for 2 weeks." He said it without apology. "I needed to see if the decision was yours or if it was," he gestured slightly toward Naruto. "It was mine," Sasuke said, "and the edge in it was sharp and genuine. I know that now." Itachi looked at him steadily. "You're stronger." "I know. Not just technically." Something moved through Itachi's expression, very fast and controlled. "The way you move. The way you make decisions." He paused. "You're not running toward something anymore. You're building toward it." He looked at Naruto again, briefly. "His influence." "Both directions," Naruto said. "It goes both ways." Itachi considered that. "Yes. I imagine it does." He looked back at Sasuke. He stopped. "Started differently. There are things you don't know. About the clan. About that night." He was choosing his words with the deliberate care of someone who has been holding a speech for years and is discovering that the planned version isn't the right version for the actual moment. "Things I chose not to tell you because I calculated that the version of you who hated me and pursued me would grow stronger faster than the version of you who knew the truth." The forest was very quiet. "That was a mistake," Itachi said. Sasuke's expression fractured. Just for a second, just the hairline fracture of someone whose wall has taken a specific impact in a specific place, and then it reformed, but not entirely, because something had come through the crack that was now in the room with all of them, and it wasn't going back. "You don't get to," Sasuke started. "I know," Itachi said. "I don't get to anything. I'm not here to ask for anything." His voice was steady and very gentle, which was its own kind of terrible precision. "I'm here because he," another brief glance at Naruto, "walked through Kimimaro at stage 2 and the reports of it reached Pain within 48 hours and Pain went quiet. When Pain goes quiet, the organization recalibrates. And when Akatsuki recalibrates, everyone adjacent to their interests becomes more exposed." He looked at Sasuke. "You are adjacent to their interests." "So are you," Sasuke said. "Yes. But I can manage my own exposure." Something crossed his face. "You are my," he stopped on the word, made a decision about it, said it anyway, "brother. The management of your exposure is something I have historically done poorly. I'm attempting to correct that." The word sat in the forest morning with the weight of everything it contained. Sasuke's jaw was very tight. His hands, Naruto noticed, were not shaking, but the effort of that was visible to anyone paying attention, and Naruto was paying attention with everything he had. "The things you said you'd tell me," Sasuke said slowly. "When I was strong enough." "Yes. When is that?" Itachi looked at him. The Manjikyu was still inactive, and without its specific gravity Itachi's eyes were just dark and tired and looking at his brother with the quality of someone who has been carrying a particular weight for a very long time and has arrived at the moment where setting it down is possible, and the possibility of setting it down is almost harder to hold than the weight itself was. "Now," Itachi said. "If you want it." Sasuke looked at him for a long time. All of it was in the look, the years, the massacre, the loneliness, the rage that had structured itself into purpose, and underneath all of that something that had never stopped being what it had been when Sasuke was 7 years old and his brother was his favorite person in the world. All of it in the look, unmanaged, raw, present. "Naruto," Sasuke said, without looking at him. "Yeah," Naruto said. He was already stepping back. "I'll be at the tree lean." He moved to the edge of the path and turned his back on the two of them and looked at the trees, and the forest was very ordinary and very peaceful in the morning light, and he listened to the sounds of it. The birds had come back, he noticed, which they sometimes did when the presence of something overwhelming had moved far enough away that ordinary life could resume, and he let the conversation behind him happen without him in it. He didn't know how long it lasted. Long enough for the quality of the light to shift slightly, the sun finding a higher position. Long enough for a squirrel to make a decision about the tree 6 feet to his left and then reconsider when it noticed Naruto standing there. When Sasuke came to stand beside him, his face had been through something significant and was on the other side of it, not resolved, not healed, nothing that complicated happens that quickly, but different. Rearranged, in the way of something that has been picked up and examined and set back down in a slightly different position that fits better than the original placement had. "He's leaving," Sasuke said. "I know. He told me." Sasuke stopped. The sentence had too much in it to compress. "There's more to the massacre than I knew. Than anyone knew." He was looking at the trees, not at Naruto. It doesn't make it okay. None of it is okay." He paused. "But it makes it gives it a shape I can understand. Instead of just," he stopped again. "You don't have to, the village ordered it," Sasuke said. Very quiet. Very flat. Or elements of it did. The clan was planning a coup. There were factions. Itachi was caught in the middle and given a choice that wasn't a choice. He breathed for a moment. He asked to be the one to do it. Because if someone else did it, it would have been less surgical. Civilians would have died. People outside the clan. He paused. He asked to be the one so he could make sure I lived. The forest was very quiet. Naruto had things to say to that, many things about the village and about the people who made that order and about the specific category of cruelty that wears the face of necessity, but none of them were the right things for this moment. The right thing for this moment was the one he did, which was to stand there and be present and not look away. "He's not asking me to forgive him," Sasuke said. He said he's not asking for that. He just, something caught in his voice for exactly 1 second and then cleared. He wanted me to know the truth before either of us died and I never had it. He finally looked at Naruto. He knew about you. Specifically. He's known something was dormant in you since, for years, apparently. He said when the reports came in from the forest he understood what had happened. He said, a pause. He said our father would have called it an awakening. That there's a word for it in older texts. That some people carry something old and it waits for the right pressure to surface. Naruto was very still. He said you're exactly the right person to carry it, Sasuke said. He said that as a specific observation, not a compliment. He said people who carry that kind of power and are careless with it or frightened of it or arrogant about it, they break. And people who carry it and are just, themselves, they build. He looked at Naruto with those dark eyes that had seen too much for someone their age and were sorting through all of it constantly. He said you're the most dangerous thing on this continent and you're using the power to escort a medical convoy. Naruto was quiet for a moment. Was that a criticism? It was an observation. Something genuine moved through Sasuke's expression. I think he approved. The birds were louder now, the morning fully established around them. The path to Konoha ran ahead through the trees, straight and familiar. Let's go home, Naruto said. And Sasuke said, yes. They walked back into Konoha at mid-morning, and the village was doing what it did, loud, alive, specific, and the gate guards processed them through with the calibrated normalcy of people who had gotten used to the fur and the tail and the gold eyes over the past month, which was its own kind of progress. The mission debrief was with Tsunade, who read Shikamaru's field report about Tanigusa with the expression of someone who had expected most of it and found the rest consistent with her model of events, and who asked 2 precise questions and then stamped the mission closed. Jiraiya arrived at the end of the debrief through the window, the office window, this time, several floors up, and stood in the window frame looking at Naruto with the expression he wore when he was deciding how much of what he was feeling was appropriate to show. Itachi made contact, Naruto said. Jiraiya went very still. With Sasuke. In the forest. It's fine. It was fine. He found the right words. Sasuke knows things now. True things. It changes the shape of where he's going. Jiraiya looked at him for a long moment. Then he looked at Sasuke, who was standing by the door with his arms folded and an expression that was not the expression of someone who had decided to hate everything, which was notable. You're staying, Jiraiya said. For now, Sasuke said. That's enough, Jiraiya said, and he meant it. Tsunade looked between all of them with the expression she wore when the outcome exceeded the mission parameters and she was deciding how to feel about that. She settled on the version of the expression that looked like mild displeasure but was actually satisfaction operating through the filter of someone who considered open satisfaction a professional liability. Dismissed, she said. All of you. Go eat something. The ramen shop was busy at midday, the way it always was, the good kind of busy, the organized chaos of a place that had its rhythm and kept it, Tucci moving with the efficiency of someone who had been doing this one thing extremely well for a very long time. Ayam was taking orders at one end of the counter. The smell was the best smell Naruto knew, which was saying something now that his nose had opinions about everything. He got his usual. Miso, extra pork, extra broth. Tucci put it in front of him without asking, the way he always had, and looked at the fur and the tail and the gold eyes the way he'd been looking at them for a month, which was to say, with complete normalcy, because Tucci had long since made the specific decision that Naruto was Naruto and the details of what Naruto currently looked like were secondary information. Sasuke sat beside him and ordered with the precise minimalism of someone who found menus an unreasonable quantity of decisions. Shikamaru arrived 5 minutes later and took the seat on the other side and ordered and immediately became horizontal against the counter in the way of someone who is very tired and has excellent spatial awareness about where counters are. Pain received the Tanigusa report, Jiraiya said, arriving and sitting at the end of the counter and ordering tea rather than food, which was his right but made Naruto privately concerned about his nutritional habits. Through Akatsuki's intelligence channels. The version that Kabuto would have delivered. He wrapped his hands around the tea. There's been movement in their coordination. Subtle. They're reorganizing something. The timeline for coming after me? Naruto said. Among other things. Jiraiya was looking at the counter, not at Naruto. Pain is not a person who acts without sufficient information. He'll want to understand you before he moves. That buys time. He paused. Not unlimited time. I know. Naruto was already halfway through the ramen. I'll be ready. I know you will. Jiraiya looked at him sidelong. That's not actually the thing I'm worried about. Then what are you worried about? A pause. Jiraiya turned the teacup in his hands. You changed so fast. The power surfaced and you just absorbed it. Wore it. Like it had always been yours. He said it carefully. Most people, when they get something that big, it takes them years to understand it. Years of mistakes. Years of overreach. He met Naruto's eyes. You went from knowing nothing about it to carrying it like a natural in 2 weeks. And I don't know if that's because it is natural, because it always belonged to you, or because you're still in the phase where it's easy and the hard part is still coming. Naruto thought about that. Honestly, the way he'd learned to think about Jiraiya's honest questions. Both, probably. Jiraiya nodded slowly. Probably. But the hard part being coming doesn't change what I do right now. He finished the ramen, set the bowl down, looked at Jiraiya. It just means I keep going. Yes. Jiraiya set his tea down. That's the answer I was hoping for. He reached into his coat and produced a small scroll and set it on the counter between them. I've been writing. The research, everything from the last month, the old texts, the observations from training. I want you to have it. In case he stopped. In case it's useful. Naruto looked at the scroll. Then at Jiraiya. You're going somewhere. Not yet. But the world is reorganizing around you, kid, and I have things to do in that reorganization that aren't compatible with standing in training ground 7 watching you rearrange the geography. He smiled, and it was the real one, not the performance smile he aimed at strangers and enemies. I need to find out what Akatsuki is actually building. What Pain actually wants. And I need to find it before they decide they have enough information to move. He paused. The best thing I can do for you right now is that. Not the training. The intelligence. Naruto picked up the scroll. Come back, he said. Jiraiya stood, threw coins on the counter, enough to cover everyone's meal, which he did without announcement. Always do, he said, and he went out the front door instead of through the window, which felt like something, though neither of them named it. Shikamaru lifted his head from the counter. He said that to mirror what Tsunade said to you, he said. The come back, always do pattern. I noticed. I know, Naruto said. Just observing. I know. Sasuke was looking at the empty space where Jiraiya had been with an expression that was quiet and specific, the expression of someone who has spent enough time lately watching what loyalty looks like from the outside that they've started to understand something about it from the inside. He's going after Pain, Sasuke said. Eventually, Naruto said. He stopped. It's dangerous. Yes, Naruto said. You're not going to tell him not to go. Would you tell him not to go? Sasuke considered. No. Neither will I. Naruto looked at the door. He's Jiraiya. He knows what he's doing. He paused. And even if it goes wrong, he'd rather it go wrong while he was doing something real than have it go right while he was standing in a training ground watching me. A silence. Then Shikamaru, quietly, that's genuinely profound. I told you, Naruto said. Philosophy. Valid delivery methods. Came to collect the bowls and paused, looking at the three of them, at whatever it was they were carrying today, all three of them, visible in the specific way things are visible when you've known someone a long time and can read the weather of them accurately. More ramen, she said. Yes, Naruto said. Obviously, Sasuke said. Please, Shikamaru said, which was unusually polite, which meant he was more tired than he was showing. Smiled and went to the kitchen, and the shop noise continued around them, and outside the window Konoha was being itself, loud, ordinary, thoroughly alive, and Naruto sat in the middle of all of it with the fur and the tail and the gold eyes and the scroll Jiraiya had left him and the bowl that was about to be refilled and the people on either side of him who were still there, which was the only thing he'd ever actually asked for. He unrolled the scroll a few inches. Jiraiya's handwriting filled the first section, dense, detailed, the research of a man who had never written anything carelessly in his life. And at the very top, above the technical notes and the chakra theory and the references to ancient texts, a single line that wasn't research at all, you were always this. Everything else was just waiting room. Naruto read it once. Then he rolled the scroll up and tucked it inside his jacket, against his chest, where the secondary network hummed in its steady, ancient, permanent way, and he looked at the counter and waited for the ramen to come back, and his tail moved behind him in the slow, easy arc of something that had finally, after 13 years of being told it didn't belong anywhere, found the floor beneath its feet. Outside, Konoha moved in its rhythms. Missions went out and came back. Children ran through the streets with wooden kunai and wild ambitions. The Hokage mountain watched everything from above, the four stone faces looking out over a village that had survived everything it had met and was currently in the process of meeting something new. In the Akatsuki's meeting place, Pain opened his eyes and looked at a space that none of his projections occupied and thought for a long time. In an underground laboratory, Orochimaru added a line to a scroll and underlined it twice. On a road northeast of Fire Country, Jiraiya pulled his coat tighter and walked faster, reading the intelligence reports he was receiving from Relay Hawks and revising his route, and his expression was the one that meant he had already made the decision he was about to make and was now purely in the logistics. And in a ramen shop at midday, a bowl arrived, and someone said thank you, and the afternoon opened up ahead of all of them with everything it contained, the danger and the distance and the things that hadn't happened yet, wide and present and entirely, completely real.